Do they still want Ryan Day fired? Are there still people clamoring for this man's job? Ohio State gets it done, 34-23 in Atlanta last night against the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. 9 college football titles. They are now tied with USC for the 4th most since the NCAA started recognizing championships. Congratulations to the Buckeyes and their fans, of which there are many celebrating today across the country because it is a national fan base. Good morning. Welcome in. 615-737-1045. The number if you want to jump in there. Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and on Twitch is how you get involved in the F&M Bank chat, where all manner of comments await you. We have special teams coaching news to talk about, which is kind of interesting news. It's exciting news for Titans fans, but there's still a bit of a caveat as we await potentially more news regarding the special teams situation, and we got a lot of ground to cover. Dane Brugler is going to be here in about 18 minutes from now. As a matter of fact, who better to talk about college football and college football prospects with than the lead draft analyst for The Athletic. It'll be a mock draft Tuesday instead of a mock draft Monday. Good morning, boys.
The greatest single season redemption story in college football history.
Okay.
Modern college football history.
Why does he always come in here? Were you here last year after the national championship game, Jackson?
I was not.
Hey, this man comes in here after every championship game that we have done since the radio show started and proclaimed it to be something, the greatest college football result in the history of the sport from a variety of different angles, not that specific angle, but you know.
You
are more recent.
Had the show kind of been stinky.
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, what's the best national championship game that we've had?
There has not been a good game.
Yeah.
Last night was fun. Notre Dame, credit to Notre Dame.
Notre Dame got back in it.
They made it a game in the second half where it looked like it was going to be a repeat of Bama Notre Dame 2012. We've not had one since 2017, the 2017 season. In fact, in the last 6 national championship games, not including last night, 6 of the last 7, I guess, the average margin of victory has been 27.8 points. The average margin of victory.
Gross.
The closest college football playoff national championship we have had happened last night since 2017 Bama Georgia, and that was 2nd and 26, a classic. That was an absolute classic. The reality is we've not had a lot of good national championship games in the playoff era. They have been few and far between.
Bama Alabama in 22 was good.
Bama Alabama?
Georgia Alabama.
Talk about a spring game in 22.
Yes.
The way that these national championship games tend to end up a bit lopsided, it's kind of indicative of what the Super Bowl used to be, right? For a long time in the NFL, you would get through the NFL playoffs, you would get to the Super Bowl, and the Super Bowl would end up being a blowout on one side or the other. It feels like college football has kind of taken that mantle.
Yeah. Look, this is one reason why I like the 12-team playoff. The 2 teams in the national championship deserve to be there, and you can't say otherwise, right? But one beat Georgia and Penn State on the way. The other, Ohio State, had the toughest path you could possibly create, Tennessee, Oregon, and they get all the way there, beating Texas in the semifinal. But to my comment about the biggest single-season redemption story in modern college football history, I will remain quiet and allow you to give me and present to me a better single-season redemption story for how the fan base, how the entire country felt about a program and a team and a coach in Ryan Day after the Michigan game.
That's a good question.
To winning the national championship.
I don't have an example off the top of my head, but I'm telling you, every Tuesday for the last 4 years that we've done the radio show, you've come in here and proclaimed said national championship game that predated the radio show to be the greatest in modern history since X. So it's.
Do you have another example?
No, I don't.
When I've said that, you don't.
Normally I do.
So
this
you have
time
no
I do
evidence
not.
to back up your claim.
No,
Does he
I
do it
just
with the Super
as
Bowl
is tradition.
No, this is the first time in 4 years that I have not had a specific example of that, and it's not the most recent incident of you being hyperbolic about a college football game.
Whether Ohio State or Notre Dame won this game, I would have come out saying that this morning because Notre Dame losing to Northern Illinois, we have not seen a national champion in the modern era drop a game like that in the regular season.
Well, because somebody in the chat presents Notre Dame after losing to NIU being, it's reasonable.
Also, like the winner of this game would have had a claim to that. We'll just put it in the 21st century. LSU is the only 2-loss national champion. They did that in the BCS era. They slipped up a couple times. They lost to a Kentucky team that was particularly good that year. They didn't have an embarrassing fall-on-your-face, stub-your-toe loss like Notre Dame to Northern Illinois, like Ohio State to Michigan. So, yeah, I can't think of one. I can't think of a team that had a lower regular season moment and bounced back to win a national championship than Ohio State losing to Michigan in that way and then bouncing back with the toughest path to get there on top of it. And I would have been saying the same thing about Notre Dame after losing to NIU in week 2.
No, you may be right. This may be exactly what you proclaimed it to be. It's just the first time in 4 years that you've been correct about your assessment.
What was that? What was my claim last year?
Oh, it was something like
when Michigan beat Washington.
It was something to the effect, I can't remember off the top of my head, but I know that there have been hyperbolic claims. I suppose Jackson could go back and look at the podcast or the YouTube if we were really that hell-bent on finding out about it. But I know it's a time-honored tradition around here, unlike any other. Now, what I will say for Notre Dame, because they do deserve credit, they made Ohio State work harder for it than anybody else did en route to getting to the college football playoff, because Ohio State defeats Tennessee 42-17. They roll Oregon in the Rose Bowl, 41-21, and Texas then in the Cotton Bowl, 28-14. It was the high-octane offense of Ohio State, just as we all expected, that put them over the top of Notre Dame. And that first drive that Notre Dame had, where Riley Leonard ran, 9 times for 34 yards on the initial drive, scored after picking up a 4th and 1 from the Ohio State 5.
They ran 9:45 off the clock on the opening series.
I saw some people tweeting about corporate sponsors being upset because the first quarter only lasted 26 minutes. But ESPN reported that Leonard ran to the sideline, threw up, stumbled a little bit. Kirk Herbstreit was commentating on the idea that he looked exhausted after the first drive of the game. I'm not sure if there was reporting around him having some kind of illness during the game, or if that was just nerves.
I think it was just being used as a human battering ram for 10 minutes of game time.
It's reasonable. And then Ohio State very quickly turns the tide. Will Howard is excellent. Will Howard was excellent throughout the course of this college football playoff. He was damn near perfect throughout the course of the game. Their ensuing drive, 11 plays, 75 yards. And you have 21 unanswered points then by Ohio State, which just makes it difficult for Notre Dame to crawl back in. And they do try. They do try in the second half, to their credit. They get a turnover that Marcus Freeman, coming out of halftime, was speaking with, I think it was Holly Rowe that he was speaking with, said they just needed to get a turnover to capitalize, create some momentum. They get the turnover, but then they can't capitalize on it with points because they doink a field goal for a team that had the worst field goal percentage in the country coming into the college football playoff. And they did have some moments where the field goal kicker had redeeming moments en route to getting to the title game in Atlanta.
But he was fine in the playoff, and it was a chip shot.
Yeah,
but
them there.
It's more the decision. Down 16 to cut it to 13. And I guess if they had made that field goal, they would have gotten the ball back because they did get the ball back. They cut the Ohio State lead to 8. In theory, if they had made that field goal, they would have cut the Ohio State lead to 5. So then suddenly, if you get that third down stop and you get the ball back, you're going for a touchdown and an extra point to win the game, not needing a touchdown and a 2-point just to tie the game. So I understand Marcus Freeman's explanation of it, but it's still hard to sell needing 2 touchdowns, kicking the field goal to still need 2 touchdowns. That's tough for me. But how about Ohio State just lulling everybody to sleep with the conservative quarterback runs, just trying to run out the clock, 3rd and long. Notre Dame selling out to stop that quarterback run. There's no way they put it in the air here. Deep shot, Jeremiah Smith, game over. I mean, that was just
the perfect way to end it.
Expertly called by Ryan Day and Chip Kelly.
So Ryan Day redeemed after being tormented by the fake Lou Holtz, not also the real Lou Holtz, I guess, dating back. Was that last year that they had their...
That was last season in the regular season when Ohio State went up to play Notre Dame, and Lou Holtz, what do you call him, soft?
He said something about them being soft.
And Ryan Day in the postgame.
Lou Holtz there, past his bedtime.
He was there.
In a box, taking in the sights and sounds. I don't know if Ryan Day went up to said box after the fact and gave him a people's elbow to the back of the head or something like that, given that they apparently have not resolved their differences in the year plus since then, as we watch the replay of the national championship right now where Georgia Peaches sang the national anthem. Did you catch that?
I did.
Or signed the national anthem, I suppose.
Very well done. Atlanta always does a fine job hosting the national championship.
It's a great stadium for it. Great city for it.
Best roster won the national championship.
Well, $20 million roster. Won the is that what it costs to get in the game of winning national championships? Is $20 million plus? Because initially, I remember the discussion around Ohio State last year being like, all right, it's going to cost us about 13. That number went up $7 million by the time Ohio State had everybody brought back in and on NIL deals that were satisfactory for the bulk of the roster. Is it going to cost more than $20 million to win a national championship in the future?
No, I think Michigan proved that you don't have to have a bunch of dragons littered across your roster, a bunch of, Michigan did have a bunch of NFL players, but in terms of recruiting talent profile, Michigan was not at the top of college football last year. Notre Dame wasn't either, and they got to the national championship game. But it definitely helps. I mean, Ohio State, I think there's this misconception that because you throw around $20 million roster, that they just cobbled their roster together, just poaching guys from across the country. And they did. They got their quarterback. They got Quinshon Judkins from Ole Miss, Caleb Downs from Alabama. A lot of their star players were transfers. But they also recruited, speaking of, as we bring it back to the Titans, developed and retained their entire wide receiver core, right? Jack Archer, a large portion of their defensive line. Like, they did an incredible job of balancing all of that out, supplementing in the portal, but recruiting, developing, and retaining. And that's why they're national champs. But I don't think that means it has to be the formula moving forward. That if you don't spend $20 million on your roster.
Programs are for sure going to try this. Like, they're going to try, it's an arms race now. That's what it's going to be.
They also have
it's going to drive
Smith.
the prices up for everybody.
They have a Jeremiah Smith, and those don't come around very often, right? Like, there are,
but it doesn't mean, listen, it's not, Lucas, it's not based on what a player's talent level is relative to the rest of the field. It's what did that guy get paid? I want that much. No, I want more. That's what that's what it's going to become. As is, any bidding situation, which has basically been college football since the beginning of time, but now it's just legal to do such things. Dane Brugler is going to join us coming up next. Who better to recap the national championship game with and move forward as we put a bow on a college football season into the draft process, where we will talk about many of these different players in a different light. We'll talk about that and also the Titans with the number 1 overall pick with Dane Brugler of The Athletic coming up next. The Tennessee Men's Clinic has helped guys for over a decade regarding ED treatments because there's a lot of misconceptions out there, and they are helpful in debunking those. Lots of men assume that if the pills stop working, they may have no other options than, for example, irreversible surgery to treat ED. And the sad reality is that if you go to a doctor to treat ED, those may be the only protocols they have available for you. The Tennessee Men's Clinic specializes in men's sexual health issues, so make sure that you talk to them first before you consider such extreme measures. It's all they do. It makes them the experts in the field, and they have access to multiple protocols and options to treat ED based on specific needs and what's going on in your body. So don't trust your health to an online pharmacy, and don't feel like you're out of options. They want you to understand all of your options regarding ED treatment. They have treatments for everything from low testosterone to ED treatments that increase size and stamina and everything else in between. So schedule an appointment online today at TennesseeMen'sClinic.com for their Franklin or Midtown location, or call them 615-208-9090. Welcome back to the show, fueled by Hattie B's Hot Chicken on this Tuesday morning. National championship decided, the 2024 college football season in the books. We know that draft season is well underway, even though the college football season has just concluded. And it's always our great pleasure to be joined by Dane Brugler of The Athletic. You can read him at theathletic.com for all of his draft insights and acumen as we lead up to, in particular, the Titans having the number 1 overall draft pick. Good morning, Dane.
Good morning. How are you guys?
We're good, brother. So we took in the national championship game. I know you typically take a look at and you produce content for The Athletic year-round, but I know you took a look at how many draft picks ahead of as you continue your draft preparations, not ahead of your draft preparations. I know those are well underway. How many draft picks are on the 2 respective rosters that we watched last night? How many did you come up with?
So I came up with 22, but there's a big difference in terms of the number Notre Dame's going to produce this year and the number Ohio State's going to produce. Obviously, Notre Dame, a good team, a lot of young talent. Ohio State just the far more talented player or team in terms of draftable players. And down the road, 2026, 2027, we'll see more Notre Dame players go to the draft. But this Ohio State team, they have a chance to break the record. Since the draft went to 7 rounds back in 1994, the most draft picks in a single year is Georgia. They had 15 2 years ago. This year, Ohio State's got a chance, a pretty good chance. And I'm being conservative by saying they're going to have at least 15, if not 16 or 17 draft picks. So some of it will depend on some of these juniors. They've got some decisions to make. The deadline for anybody that played the national title game is the 24th this week. So we'll see what the underclassmen decide to do. But no mystery why Ohio State won the national title with as much talent and draftable talent that they have on that roster.
Would Jeremiah Smith be the number 1 non-quarterback in this year's draft class were he able to come out?
There's not a doubt in my mind. He is that good. And we're talking about a 19-year-old. I mean, what's he going to look like at 23?
It's crazy.
You know, like it physically, he's already looks like he's 23, 25. And what you love about Jeremiah Smith is it's not like it's just he's bigger than everybody, faster than everybody. Like, he understands how to play at the position. You can tell how hard he works at it in terms of setting up his routes, the pacing, the ball skills are tremendous. So yeah, it'll be interesting to watch him the next 2 years because you can't do better than what he did this year. He won a national title as a freshman. He was the Big Ten wide receiver of the year. He had over 1,300 receiving yards. He set a ton of Ohio State records. Now you're going to, bring in a new quarterback next year. Who knows? The offense is going to lose a lot. I don't know if the production's going to look quite the same, but I do know that the talent is exactly what NFL teams are looking for. So and maybe the best example of what Ohio State has done the last few years is Emeka Egbuka, one of the best receivers in this draft, has a good chance to be a first-round pick. Nobody has more catches in Ohio State history than Emeka Egbuka, and he was probably never the most talented receiver in his 4 years at Ohio State. Because when he got there, you're talking about Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, and then Jackson Smith and Jigba, and then Marvin Harrison Jr., and then this year, Jeremiah Smith. He was probably never the most talented receiver on that roster, yet he's still going to be a first-round pick. He's still going to be a really good NFL receiver, which is just kind of crazy thinking about that receiver depth chart the Buckeyes have had the last few years.
At DP Brugler is where you follow him on Twitter. Theathletic.com is where you can read our friend Dane Brugler, who joins us now.
And then Carnell Tate, who I know is not draft eligible, would probably be wide receiver 1 on the majority of teams across college football. It's just insane, Dane. I'm curious if there's any sort of run that you think back to and you think about one program churning out this much NFL talent at one specific position. Like Georgia had it rolling at the running back position. I guess Alabama, take your pick, at the position that they were just pumping out draft picks. But something like this high-end first-round talent, is there anything you can even compare it to?
LSU's got a pretty good. You think about Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, and then what Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas did last year. That's pretty good. That is a pretty impressive run. Ohio State has just done it maybe a little bit longer and just more volume. Guys that are first round picks, but then have staying power in the NFL. And so it's Alabama had a couple top 15 picks at receiver, and then the year before Jerry Jeudy. Alabama's had a good run, but yeah, that LSU run at receiver is pretty close. But it just, LSU, Ohio State, they're really fighting it out for that wide receiver U crown.
I feel like we do this all the time with quarterbacks that have an elite wide receiver core in college football. Does it or does it not hurt their draft stock? Is it a big reason for their success? Does that work against them? And I'd ask that about Will Howard to you. I mean, where does he kind of stack up for you after that performance yesterday in terms of maybe being one of those QB3 candidates where it feels like there's room for movement, right, for one of those guys to climb the boards?
Yeah, and the thing that impressed me the most about Will Howard throughout this year is just the mental toughness. Go back to the Penn State game. He throws a pick six on the first drive, and this is his hometown state. That Penn State, the school he wanted to play at, before the game, he said, we'll see if I'm good enough. Like, there was so much pressure on him, throws a pick six. Most guys are going to wilt after that. He comes back, leads a touchdown drive. They end up winning that game. When he did that, it was like, okay, this guy's wired a little bit differently. And then to go through have that Michigan loss, which wasn't on Will Howard. It was more on the game plan and the play calling. But then you go through the playoff and he has the success that he did. And yeah, it certainly helps that you're throwing to the Jeremiah Smiths, the Emeka Ibukas, the Carnell Tates. You've got a two stable running back group that are both going to be top 100 picks next year. And the offensive line played well, which was a kind of the unsung hero of this Ohio State run, especially Donovan Jackson moving from left guard to left tackle, replacing Simmons, who got hurt in the Oregon game. So there were a lot of factors around him that certainly help. And that'll kind of be used against him a little bit when you talk about, all right, what's not to like about him is, okay, how much is he doing on himself and how much was just the supporting cast? But he deserves credit for making the throws and being on time with his throws and his decisions. He's a mobile athlete. And that was the big reason Ohio State moved on from Kyle McCord, is they wanted more mobility. They wanted a guy that could use his legs and be a threat. And Kyle McCord went on and had a great season at Syracuse, but I don't think they win this national title without the element that Will Howard brought with his legs and that mobility. So, it's something that will help him throughout the process. This is a weird draft class in terms of the quarterbacks because we have, the two guys at the top. I would even say it's probably one guy at the top. And then you have a group that's second and third tiers, rounds, say between picks 50 and 120, where there's some interesting quarterbacks. And Will Howard's in that mix with guys like Kyle McCord, with guys like Tyler Shuck from Louisville, talking about Quinn Ewers, Jackson Dart. Like, there's some interesting quarterbacks in that group that a team might look at it and say, instead of using a first on one of these guys, let's just wait till the second or the third or the fourth, and we'll take a flyer on a Riley Leonard. We'll take we'll try one of these guys and see if it works out. If not, then we're not investing huge draft capital at the position. We can go back and maybe use a first rounder next year. So this is a really unique quarterback year in terms of not having the guys at the top that just knock your socks off, but then also having some pretty decent depth where you can talk yourself into one of these guys. And that'll come during the next few months when the coaches and the play callers get involved. That's where, I think, the scouts have already put in their grades on these quarterbacks, but once the offensive coordinators, once the head coaches get involved, that's what could change things a little bit. Because if you connect with one of these guys during the interview process, that'll go a long way to where he'll stack up on the final draft board.
Yeah, and that's kind of the conundrum that a team like Tennessee is in, having a wretched football season the way that they did, the number one overall pick now. And as you described it, an interesting quarterback class specifically. I know that you've mocked Cam Ward to the Titans in some of the preliminary stuff that you've done, Dane, but would you, if it was you making the pick, would you consider potentially one of the strategies that you've just outlined, which is potentially addressing other needs on a roster that's pretty bereft of talent, even though they've spent 2 years now trying to get it up off the mat, and potentially look at one of these later round quarterbacks as a stopgap type of situation or a flyer, also considering that Tennessee does not have a third round pick, 66th overall, belongs to the Kansas City Chiefs because of that L'Jarius Sneed trade?
You go into the process with an open mind and say, look, we would love to upgrade the quarterback position if we can. We at least want to bring in competition. And, if I had a bet on one of these quarterbacks in this draft, it would be Cam Ward because of just how electric he is. He can create big plays. but he's so loose at the position that it does, that will backfire at times. I'm encouraged by the fact that he's gotten better every year. You go back to Incarnate Word and what he did at Washington State, and then what he did this past year at Miami, he got better and better and better. And so there's, as the decision making and the accuracy continue to develop, it feels like this guy can be an NFL starter and be one of the difference makers if he continues to grow. But it feels just like there is risk involved. And so if I'm the Titans, I'm going into this process saying, I'm letting every other team know, hey, we're looking at these quarterbacks really hard. And that way, even if I'm not taking a quarterback at 1, I'm going to put a little bit of, I'm going to make the Giants nervous at pick 3. I'm going to make the Raiders nervous at pick 6. So the phone lines are open. And I think the ideal scenario is you get a call from the Giants and they offer, it's not going to be like what the Panthers gave up to the Bears to go up to number 1 pick 2 years ago. It won't be that type of haul, but hey, if I can get multiple day 2 picks or whatever it ends up being, that's great. Because then I can go back to number 3 and I still get either Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter, and then I have other day 2 picks to play with. I can, if I want to address quarterback there, and you're going into this process with a new GM, so there's plenty of kind of unknowns about what does he think of Will Levis? What does he think about so there's definitely some unknowns. But if I was going into this process, if I'm the Titans, you never want to, whenever you have the number 1 pick or a top 10 pick, it's a good thing because you have a chance to get better and a good player. But relative to other top 10s or number 1 overall picks, this is a year that's just a little bit weaker than others. But at the same time, it's still, an advantageous position. You're in a place of power. So even though it's not a great quarterback group, I'm letting everybody know that I'm open for business and I want to look at these quarterbacks. So, we have our options open.
I know, and you may not know Mike Borgonzi at all, but I know you move in a lot of these circles, Dane. He's obviously, as you mentioned, the new general manager here, coming over from the Kansas City Chiefs after 16 years with that organization, helping to contribute to the rise that they've had from a 4-win team his first year to now 3-time Super Bowl champion in that span and 7 consecutive AFC championships. The structure of the Chiefs front office and their personnel department specifically is being studied more and more because of the level of success that they've had. I wonder if you do know anything about Mike Borgonzi that you might be able to share with Titans fans.
Well, no, and I do remember Mike so this back in 2015, summer of 2015, I interviewed with the Chiefs for a scouting position, and that was John Dorsey was there, and Chris Ballard, and I had to do evaluations and then present them to a room of probably 15, 20 guys, the whole scouting staff. I know Mike was in there, some of the coaches. And so, I had a chance to meet him, and, he was a great guy. During my evaluations, when I'm giving, when I had to watch tape and then present my evaluation to the room, he asked a couple questions to me. I know it was really smart questions. He's a really smart guy, just based on my limited interactions with him. I think that obviously you want to, it's a brain drain, right? You want to get the programs that are successful, the teams that have winning records. You want to get that and bring it to your building. And based on what I know from him, it feels like he's a guy that can do that. Now, you have to show that you can do it through the draft. You have to build the roster. So it'll be interesting to see. How close does he see this roster to being, competing for the division? How close, what does he want to do? At what positions does he feel like he needs to attack the most? And he's going into a situation with the number 1 overall pick. And that's why I think, the best case scenario is you trade back and you get more draft picks, because he's going to want to build things, basically, in the way he wants to build a roster, and you do that through the draft. And so if I had to guess right now, I'd say there's a good chance that they are going to look to trade back and accumulate that draft wealth and try to build this team in different spots, those key positions, similar to the way that the Chiefs did.
Just an aside, since we're talking about front office structures or just kind of around them, the job of general manager in today's NFL, we're kind of working through the structure of what the Titans are setting up here between the president of football operations and Chad Brinker. Mike Borgonzi is a general manager, as opposed to what most people, I think, have had in their heads of what a general manager is, which is one person who's probably been a scout at some point in their career, probably worked their way up through multiple levels of an organization after being a scout. But it's not just one person doing these jobs anymore, Dane. And I wonder how much bigger the job of personnel roster construction has gotten, where it has to be delegated this way.
Yeah, well, you hit the nail on the head. There's just so many cap space, and how you're managing the different contracts, and there's just so many elements to this. And the biggest thing, you look at the most successful organizations, is just the teams that are all on the same page. There's no infighting. There's no, everybody has a clear vision of the way you want to build it. So that's why we see a lot of teams kind of, they don't want, you try to line it up so the GM and a head coach are on the same timeline. And obviously the Titans doing it a little bit differently. So you just, hope that GM head coach relationship gets off to a great start, and they have a similar vision with how they want to build this. The delegation of power needs to be understood from the start in terms of who has final control over the 53. How are we going to delegate, in the war room, what's it going to look like when we build this board, and who's going to make the final decision? And just, you don't want any type of infighting from that perspective. And that's something that's so important to organizational success, obviously. So, we'll see, coming into, because Mike's coming from, in the Chiefs, where Andy Reid has Veach is obviously a GM there, but Andy Reid has a huge say in what goes on there. And so how will that work here with the coaching staff? It'll be really interesting to see how it plays out.
Dane Brugler of The Athletic here with us on 104.5 The Zone, talking a little draft on the heels of last night's national championship game.
Dane, it's not necessarily a need with the Titans, but I am fascinated at the running back class in this upcoming draft, both with how the value of the position is being talked about with the years Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry have had, and just how deep this class is. How do you think those two things kind of merge together in relation to the way running backs are going to fly off the board in a couple months, and where to you does Dylan Sampson out of Tennessee stack up in all of that?
Yeah, running back is the best position this year in terms of the most depth. It is a loaded group, and it usually, we usually get a lot of underclassmen that come out. This year's no different. I think we're at double-digit underclassmen that are in this class. But you have the headliner at the top, obviously, with Ashton Genty. I think Caleb Johnson from Iowa is a first-round pick. A couple second-rounders with, I think Dylan Sampson's right there with Travion Henderson, Amarian Hampton, a chance to be a top 50, top 60 pick when it's all said and done. But I think the thing that hurts, especially a guy like Ashton Genty, a guy that hurts him is teams are going to look at this depth and say, we could wait until the third round and feel great about getting a Devin Neal from Kansas or Woody Marks from USC. The list just goes on of talented running backs in this class that, hey, let's get the tackle here in the first, and we'll get our running back third round, fourth round, and feel great about the guy we're getting. And that's why I wouldn't be surprised if, Ashton Genty's a top 5 player in this draft just in terms of talent. I wouldn't be surprised if he's available at pick 20, just because how some teams look at the running back position and say, not that it's not important, but we feel like we feel great about the guy we can get in the third round, and we feel like we can answer a different need earlier in this draft. So the running back class is loaded. And to your point about the free agent class we had last year with Saquon, Derrick Henry, and those guys, it's the opposite with this year's free agent class. It's not a great running back free agent group. And so I think a lot of teams are going to target the draft to go get these running backs. And we'll see how that affects strategy with when teams, how early they draft these guys.
Dane, appreciate you fitting us into your schedule. I know it's about to get a hell of a lot more busy here in the coming weeks and months, but always good to catch up with you. Appreciate you making us smarter, and I'll probably see you at the Combine, bud.
All right, man. Looking forward to it. Thanks, guys.
That's Dane Brugler of The Athletic with us on 104.5 The Zone. Always good insights from him, theathletic.com. Well worth your subscription on a variety of different fronts, but in particular, I don't know if there's a more comprehensive draft guide than Dane Brugler's Beast.
There's not.
Each and every year, definitively. You're declaring this?
No, there's not.
Okay.
Not that I've seen.
Very good. Do we have things to give away?
We do. Tell us what made you say, oh no, this week. 615-737-1045 for a chance to win 2 tickets to see Shinedown's Dance Kid Dance Tour with special guests Beartooth and Morgan Wade on Saturday, May 10th at Bridgestone Arena, plus a $100 A Moment's Peace gift card.
Excellent. So if you want those 2 Shinedown tickets and a $100 gift card to A Moment's Peace Salon and Day Spa, call us 615-737-1045 and tell us what in sports made you say, oh no. Start the new year off right with a new financial plan, because you've definitely asked yourself at some point the question whether you're going to have enough money when you retire or when you should start drawing from Social Security. Trajan Wealth is here to help you, and you can call them today to get that process started, because if those questions have been keeping you up at night, Trajan Wealth is there to put you on the right track and guide you through it. TRAJAN Wealth is Trajan Wealth, and they're not just any financial firm. They're your partners in securing your financial future, and they're more than just a fiduciary firm. They're a family-owned, veteran-led team that puts your needs first. Let their decades of experience specializing in retirement planning and wealth management work for you. Trajan Wealth offers free consultations to help you develop your plan and your peace of mind. So call them today at 615-270-5000. That's 615-270-5000, or visit them online at TrajanWealth.com. Advisory services offered through Trajan Wealth, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. This is a paid advertisement. That's right. Presented by A Moment's Peace Salon and Day Spa. If there's anything in your life that's making you say, oh no, as of late, you can go to A Moment's Peace Salon and Day Spa in Franklin and have a little self-care. Make yourself feel better or get a gift for a loved one. In fact, you can win a $100 gift card right now, as well as 2 tickets to the upcoming Shinedown concert at Bridgestone Arena. 615-737-1045 is the number. All you have to do to win that prize pack is call in and tell us what made you say, oh no. I'm going to go with my teammate, Kayla Anderson of Ramon, Kayla, and Will. She was off yesterday, as was Ramon Foster. It was Will and B-Hop holding it down in the morning. And, Kayla doing her due diligence, preparing for the next day's show. Yesterday was reading Albert Breer's piece that we covered from Sports Illustrated's The Monday Morning Quarterback. She quote tweeted it and said, the Titans usher in the Brinker, Borgonzi, Callahan era. Good notes here about the Borgonzi hire, except she does not spell out Brinker, Borgonzi, and Callahan era. She called it the BBC era. Now, the Twitter comments were not kind. They did not take that as the British Broadcasting Company. I would say if you have any questions about what that might also stand for, I would advise you to not Google it on a work computer. But Kayla, very quickly, not understanding what she had done, found the mentions and probably said, oh no.
Speaking of broadcasting companies.
He's going to gloss over that one. No thoughts, no comments, no concerns about the well-being of our friend Kayla Anderson.
My mind is pure, Buck.
Yeah, what is the other meaning, Buck?
Again, you are welcome to find out, probably not on a work computer.
Definitely not on a work computer.
Nope.
So,
would you like the Urban Dictionary?
No, I sure would. No.
Definitely not.
No. That's the one time you'll get me away from an Urban Dictionary reading.
So C-SPAN yesterday, covering obviously the inauguration of Donald Trump as president of the United States. And C-SPAN takes calls, like sports radio, but on TV. And a C-SPAN viewer called into the network's inauguration coverage to complain not just about the fact that Donald Trump has been elected, but also about something else completely unrelated.
I'm a bit more disappointed in the selection committee for not picking Alabama for the college football playoff finals, and instead picking inferior teams like SMU and Indiana. Truly dark times in America.
Okay. Love the host cutting him off at the end, but truly dark times in America because Alabama was left out of the playoff was hilarious yesterday.
It just means more. Jackson?
I'm going with, there's this rumor going around that the Raiders may have drafted the wrong Byron Young in the 2023 NFL draft. 2 Byron Youngs in that draft, one from Alabama, one from Tennessee. There's a report out there that Vegas called the Tennessee Byron Young and said, hey, keep your phone next to you. And then they take the other Byron Young.
Oh, no.
Who, obviously, the Tennessee Byron Young playing very well for the Rams.
Better player.
And the Raiders Byron Young has been cut.
Do you want to tell people your Byron Young story from the Combine? Where the scales were removed from your eyes about what the Combine actually is?
2 years ago, my first Combine experience, they do these little player podium press conferences where they trot the player out, and then Stetson Bennett's got a giant crowd because, he had just had some off-field stuff going on. And players like Byron Young have a semi-decent crowd. And I'm standing there because I'm just, getting stuff from every Tennessee player that speaks. And there is a reporter next to me, and people are just kind of tossing questions to these players, very sanitized environment. And this reporter next to me puts his hand up and he asks, are you aware that there's another Byron Young in this draft? And Byron kind of chuckles like, yeah, I did. I haven't really talked to him, but no, I do know that. And this reporter follows up with the question, and which one are you?
It made me laugh so hard because, again, it's not even a top 10 worst media moment I've witnessed at Combines. And I just looked over at Lucas, who has never displayed such visible disgust for the people that cover the NFL because most of them don't watch college football.
I couldn't believe it. My jaw literally dropped. You just asked a player who he is?
Meanwhile, I'm howling in the background watching Lucas experience this for the first time.
There's literally these screens everywhere that say exactly which player is speaking, what college he went to, what position he played.
The little school logos next to the name.
It is I could not believe what I heard when he said, "And which one are you?" Just filming him with his little iPhone.
And then proceeded to ask, have you had a meeting with the Raiders, and was it official or unofficial?
Mind-numbing stuff.
615-737-1045. It's probably one of my favorite parts about the Combine, just, NFL media being completely unaware about anything but the NFL that happens. Let's start with, for the opportunity to win those Shinedown tickets and a $100 gift card to a Moment's Peace Salon and Day Spa. How about Jermaine?
Hello?
Yes.
Yeah, what made me say wow was Vanderbilt's girls beat UT and Vanderbilt's boys beat UT. Where I'm from, that's anchor down, baby. That's wow.
Thank you, Jermaine. That's great. That's first time.
Should we just change the name of the segment to Wow?
Wow. What made you say wow this week?
We have an Owen Wilson open? Wow.
Oh, that's actually not a bad idea.
Does it disqualify him because he got the name of the segment wrong?
Oh, yes. He made us laugh.
You said yes, Jackson?
Let's see what else we got.
Yeah, let's see what else we got.
Okay. How about Jonathan next?
You guys, I don't know if you saw it. The Ravens posted a picture pregame of Mark Andrews with the caption that said the cold doesn't bother him.
Oh.
Probably not a great look considering what happened.
Oh, no. Leader in the clubhouse,
Yeah,
Jonathan.
hate that.
No, that's a tough one. Again, I don't know if it was because of the cold. I mean, there could have been any number of reasons why he dropped two passes and had the fumble. But, yeah, I mean, I'm sure the comments were not kind. Jordan, next.
Guys, my oh no is last night there was a driver who was escorting Ryan Day, Will Howard, and another Ohio State player. However, she underestimated how wide the turn was and crashed headfirst into a wall. Luckily, nobody was injured, and they all walked away laughing. But that driver needs to be, oh no.
Did you see this? The clip is on the internet.
No.
It's excellent.
Before the game?
Was it before?
After.
I thought it was after the game.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
like after, NFL does this too. If you do a press conference and you're running behind, they'll pick you up in a golf cart and take you where you need to be. In the bowels of the tunnel, the woman driving the golf cart.
That just rammed into. Okay, you've seen Austin Powers, yes?
I have.
The scene where he's stuck in a hallway on a trolley golf cart thing,
Yeah.
and he's doing the 3-point turns, but he's doing them over and over just to gain the tiniest sliver of space. That's
Like the
what
best
this
part of it is him turning around, looking backwards as he whips it, and then turns it around.
Backs it up 2 inches, and then whips the wheel back around. She rammed into this wall. Ryan Day goes lurching forward.
Can you imagine if Ryan Day got a concussion post-game?
That's the leader in the clubhouse.
Ricky is up next.
We don't have time for me to make the joke. Let's go to DJ.
DJ is up next.
Yeah, my oh no moment is actually on myself from last night. I was watching that game, and they showed Quinshon Judkins about to score his, I believe, first touchdown. But all I could focus on was his very, very short football leggings. And I made a joke to the people I was with, and then my foot got put right in my mouth because they were Ohio State fans. And he scored his first touchdown of the game. They were like, well, I will not joke on someone's attire again watching football with another fan base. So that's my oh no moment on myself. But if y'all didn't see, Quinshon Judkins' pants they're quite short.
Okay. I appreciate the call.
He goes with the Ricky Pearsall approach. When Ricky Pearsall playing for Florida, I mean, those things were like mid-thigh.
You remember Michael Bennett, the Seahawks pass rusher, and his shoulder pads that didn't look like actual shoulder pads. They were looking like knee pads on his shoulder.
Riley Leonard also has tiny shoulder pads for somebody that just throws himself into humanity play after play. But yeah, Judkins was phenomenal. Ohio State running the ball. I mean, over 200 rush yards. Judkins, 100-yard rusher, 70-yard touchdown, longest in national championship game history.
Yeah, it's it's always timely. Okay, so Jordan gets the tickets?
Oh, yeah. The golf cart slamming into the wall on the way to the press conference is
There's
great.
always something. You can always call in Tuesdays at 10:45 for the opportunity to win great prizes and tell us what in sports made you say, oh no. College football playoff season is ended. Do changes need to be made to the playoff format? We will talk about it coming up next.
It is 11:01. Good morning from the 104.5 The Zone Studios. I'm Lucas Panzica. The Ohio State Buckeyes are national champions for the first time since 2015 after beating Notre Dame 34-23 Monday night in Mercedes-Benz Stadium. They took a 31-7 lead in the third quarter, but Ohio State held off the Notre Dame comeback effort to win. Will Howard, 17 of 21, 231 yards and 2 touchdowns. The Buckeyes racked up over 200 rush yards on the day. With the college football season over, the final AP poll is out. Tennessee ranks number 9, finishing with a top 10 ranking for the second time in the last 3 years. The Tennessee Titans are reportedly hiring John Bones Fossil as their new special teams coordinator, according to multiple reports. Fossil was most recently the special teams coordinator for the Dallas Cowboys. And in other NFL news, the Bears reportedly are hiring Lions offensive coordinator Ben Johnson to be the next head coach in Chicago. For all your foundation repairs and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
So we got the national championship wrapped up, which means another college football season has come to a conclusion. Unfortunately, it was a fun one. Certainly the first iteration of the college football playoff, I thought it delivered for the most part. I know that there was some, bothered people about the lopsided results in the first round and bleeding into the second round. But for the most part, I thought the college football playoff, the 12-team college football playoff, was an enjoyable product. We're going to get into some reporting from Ross Dellinger of Yahoo Sports about potential changes to the college football playoff format, which led us to, for example, the likes of Arizona State having a first-round bye and looking at whether or not it should be the top 4 teams relative to the college football playoff finish that should receive first-round byes. But just so people are aware, because we've had a fair amount of people asking, no Mike Borgonzi press conference is scheduled right now, but I do know that the team plane has been in the air as recently as this morning, so fair to expect that once they get him here, they can get the press conference scheduled, and we can get all of that moving forward. So no more wringing of hands. It will happen at some point this week. It's just not been officially scheduled nor yet announced by the team.
Football Fred on the F&M Bank chat says, it was boring. I didn't even tune into the final 2 rounds, talking about the college football playoff.
Well, that's stupid.
Yeah, that was some of the most entertaining action was in the semifinal, both games coming down to the wire.
And yeah, you should have done that in reverse. If you were going to skip any part of the college football playoff, skip the first couple of rounds.
I thought the college football playoff was a huge success, personally. The biggest detractors of an expanded playoff, their contention is that it lessens the importance of the regular season. And in a way, they're right. Ohio State would not have gotten the chance to compete for a national championship in the 14 playoff era. Ohio State also is the most talented roster in the country, and I think deserved a chance to play for a national championship. They had to pick themselves up off the mat and then went on a legendary run with the toughest path imaginable, winning convincingly at every single stop. And did the regular season feel any less important to you when you're watching it? Like, did you take in any game this year thinking, man, this would just be a little bit better if there was a 14 playoff?
Well, I'm probably not the right person to ask because I enjoyed this college football season more than basically every other college. I was more invested in this college football season than I think I have been at any other point. Other than, the last time that I was most invested in a college football season was the last time Notre Dame made a run to the national championship and they got waxed.
Yeah.
So from my perspective, I was never more involved in a college football season the last 10 years than I have been this one because it was chaos.
Chaos.
It was everybody up for grabs. Like, I have assumed that I'm going to get an SEC team, if not 2, in the national championship game for basically the last decade plus, even though we've now had back-to-back Big Ten winners for the first time. Can you tell me since when?
Oh, back-to-back Big Ten champs for the first time since... Oh, tell me, was it the early 2000s?
The 1940s, according to Cole Kublik on Twitter last night. I believe he said 1942 is the last time that we have had Big Ten back-to-back national champions.
My goodness.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I guess Michigan won in the late 90s, and then after that, you really just had Ohio State as the only Big Ten team even contending for championship.
Ohio State just won for the first time since the inaugural college football playoff dating back to 2014. So the things that are going to be most discussed and debated as to what needs to change, because nobody's ever happy across the board, is the seeding for the college football playoff. Now, this was 4 days ago, and there's since been a meeting regarding this that Ross Dellinger's reporting around college football playoff seeding changes unlikely to happen at least next season. The advisory committee has since met since this report was put out. They had a meeting apparently the day before the national championship game it was either the day before or the Saturday before the national championship game. Either way. So Ross is reporting that a seeding structure change to the college football playoff format is unlikely to gain the necessary support without compromise, according to multiple commissioners that Ross spoke to throughout the course of the week leading up. I'm reading directly from his report at sports.yahoo.com. Eliminating the format's rule designating the top 4 seeds and first-round buys only to conference champions has been discussed as a possible shift after the first year of the 12-team playoff. However, unanimity among the 11 members of the College Football Playoff Management Committee, the 10 FBS commissioners, and Notre Dame's athletic director, is required to make any format changes in time for the 2025 playoff. So the changes may happen. It's just unlikely to be next year. He's got quotes in here from people like Brett Yormark, the commissioner of the Big 12, who says, quote, "I'm open to a healthy discussion on the topic. I certainly have a point of view that will be expressed in the room, but I do not have the appetite to give up any financial reward that comes with a bye, because right now the teams who get the first round bye do receive a substantially bigger financial reward. Everybody who makes the 12-team college football playoff has financial compensation associated with it, but there is a higher level of compensation associated with those first round buys. The incentive for the first round is $8 million. Teams advancing to the playoff each receive $4 million. Those playing in the quarterfinals receive an additional $4 million, but the ones that are in the first round outright get that $8 million off the bat.
That's the biggest contention, right, is the seeding, the top 4 seeds, the top 4 ranked conference champs getting the top 4 seeds in a bye.
It's really the only place that I would really nitpick.
Yeah, and to be honest, what do you think people took more issue with, Arizona State or Boise State having a top 4 seed?
Ooh, because Arizona State, I mean, they both delivered-ish. I know they both lost, but I mean, Arizona State, man, went down swinging.
Exactly, and Arizona State was not ranked in the top 12. Boise State was ranked in the top 10. So you can have an issue with a G5 team being one of the 4 highest-ranked conference champs, but in most other years, that's not going to happen. Boise State was a very unique situation, right? It was like a Cincinnati a few years ago. You're only going to get one of those every few years with an Ashton Genty, with that high profile of a player playing for a G5 school. I feel like Arizona State was the team that people looked at and said, no, really? Yeah, they had a great year and they had a great turnaround, but a top 4 seed. And you're right, they took Texas down 16 in the fourth quarter, and they forced that thing to overtime.
And a superhuman performance by arguably the biggest star on the team.
Yes, Cam Scatterboot. So they're a 4th down stop away in overtime from moving on. So that was the biggest contention people had. There will probably be changes from it because I think you don't want an Ohio State, the path that Ohio State had. Like, I think that is fair. The imbalance across the bracket, that was notable this year. To have Tennessee, Ohio State, Oregon, Texas, all on the same side of the bracket, and Boise, SMU, kind of Indiana, all piled on this other side of the bracket.
Rude.
I get that. So there will be changes, I expect. What they will not be doing is decreasing the amount of teams that make the playoff. I think that is a common opinion. No, put it down to 8. There's too many teams. That's not going to happen. If anything, it's just going to keep going up. But all things considered, man, there's going to be blowouts in the playoff every year. In the NFL as well. Super Wild Card Weekend had one entertaining game. One. The rest were blowouts. They were not fun to watch in the second half. So it's just going to happen every year. I don't think we need to use it as an excuse to say who should or shouldn't have made it or that there needs to be less teams in the playoff. I thought it was thoroughly entertaining from start to finish.
So another quote from ACC Commissioner Jim Phillips referred to similar professional playoff formats that use an automatic bye structure for teams that win divisions or conferences like the NFL cited the most recent regular season games between Detroit and Minnesota, where the winner, Detroit, won the NFC North, received the number 1 seed and a first-round bye. In the NFC playoffs, Minnesota obviously dropped to the wild card, had to travel for the first round, and lost to the Rams. Quote, the NFL, which we believe is the highest level of football in our world, has a system that rewards divisional champions. You see it in Major League Baseball, too. It's not as if this system is so foreign. This shouldn't be used as a convenient rationale. It deserves a review, and we should talk about how it went, but it's not some exotic structure. So these are fair points to be made in the room, and as it goes, there will be changes at some point. It's just not going to be next season. I do think that we've become accustomed in this rash of news that has overtaken the world of college football since basically the Supreme Court ruling on the name, image, and likeness stuff. We're just so used to consequential changes in college athletics and specifically college football each and every year that are significantly different than what the year prior had, because it's just been such a shifting landscape across the board on a variety of different fronts. But I'm okay with them moving forward with this for the foreseeable future. I didn't have any issues with it. I was thoroughly entertained. Yeah, the SMU game sucked. Okay, it's not the end of the world. Yeah, the Indiana-Notre Dame game sucked. It's not the end of the world. As I've mentioned a million times before, and I'm not the only person who's ever mentioned this, there are going to be blowouts in playoffs, no matter what level of sport it is, no matter what kind of sport it is. You can't expect every game to be down to the wire, decided by 1 point, like Ravens-Bills, for example. I guess that was 2 points because Mark Andrews dropped the 2-point tie, but you get my meaning. They're not all going to be that. It's just not possible. There's no way to perfectly recreate down-to-the-wire scenarios where a team that's trailing by a touchdown or a score is going to be able to draw it within at least a tie or potentially a lead every time you play one of these games. It's not feasibly possible. 615-737-1045 is how you jump in. I assume you have headlines because there was a great many of them yesterday.
Oh, yeah. Plenty of coaching staff headlines across the NFL.
Including one here that we have not yet touched on. I'm Buck Rising. It's 1045 The Zone.
It's time for NFL headlines with Lucas Panzica.
Why don't we start local? There is another head coaching hire that has happened across the NFL, but the Titans have also made a coaching staff addition. The interesting part of this is there has not been a firing reported, or there has been one
there has
reported,
been, but people jumped the gun on that.
Yeah, it seems to be very nebulous. Titans
it's not nebulous, but go ahead.
Titans are hiring John Bones Fossil to be their special teams coordinator. He is highly regarded as one of the best in the business. He was most recently the special teams coordinator of the Dallas Cowboys. He has extensively worked with Coach Dave McGinnis and Jeff Fisher, spent several years with the St. Louis/Los Angeles Rams as the special teams coordinator. So, yeah, Jordan Schultz out there saying that Colt Anderson has been informed that he is let go. That doesn't necessarily seem to be the case.
Well, the language was that he's out.
That he's out, which I guess he technically is as the special teams coordinator.
Yes, and A to Z Sports jumped the gun and put it out from the main account that he was fired, which is not true yet. It may end up happening. And I think they did make some corrections to that effect yesterday on social media, but the implication was that Colt Anderson was fired. My understanding of the situation is that they're bringing Fossil in. He's going to get a chance to take a look at what they got, which is Anthony Levine. Is it junior or senior? Either way, Anthony Levine and Colt Anderson, and see if there's not roles for them with the organization. And listen, I got no problem with them keeping Colt Anderson if Colt Anderson has actual value there. Because, I mean, they were bad. They were the worst. They were the worst by a mile. They're historically bad for more than half of the regular season. I don't think it was quite 2/3 of the season. I think they got a course corrected.
They did, to his credit.
But, after being catastrophically awful, the best thing that they did was Nick Folk and Morgan Cox, and you don't have to mess with those two. I know Nick Folk got hurt towards the end of the year, so he wasn't obviously available. But Colt Anderson may end up not having a job with this organization by week's end. But right now, the understanding is Fossil gets to come in, take a look, see what he's got, make a decision. And I'm sure when they give a press conference, likely tomorrow, it sounds like at this point, those things will be addressed, assuming that I would have to assume that Brian Callahan is going to take some level of questions tomorrow. Or let me not say tomorrow because there's not a press conference scheduled yet, but the expectation would be that it would be tomorrow at this point. Fossil is regarded as one of the best in the business. I don't think I've ever seen a special teams coordinator celebrated by as many former players that don't play special teams or don't necessarily have heavy involvement in special teams the way that John Fossil was yesterday. And former executives. I saw Amy Trask, who now does commentary for CBS Sports, formerly the Raiders.
Yeah.
Speaking very highly of him. My former Titan, Roger Saffold, speaking very highly of him. They were together when Saffold was still a member of the Rams before he signed with the Titans. Back in, I think that was 18, if memory serves correctly. Former Titan Derek Mason saying as much and talking about what a great coach he is.
Yeah, Fossil was the assistant special teams coordinator in Baltimore from 05 to 07.
Yeah, he's 51 years old. He's been around for a long, long time. He is regarded as one of the best. At his position, regarding special teams, he is regarded as one of the best. The Titans are the worst at special teams last year. You will see tangible impacts because I honestly think it's curious how many Titans fans, long term, obviously you're more excited about the GM hire because there's a million different things that touches and it can impact your football team in a variety of different ways. But the more immediate impact is the special teams coordinator because he can come in here and turn this thing around markedly right away.
If the decision is to retain Colt Anderson in some form or fashion, I think I would like that decision because I do think he deserves credit for, like you said, course correcting midway through the year. I think there were a lot of things about the initial 53-man roster that worked against Colt Anderson in terms of the career special teamer guys that they let go, the amount of players that were very inexperienced on special teams units that were playing pivotal roles early on. And you saw it, Jack Gibbons, Julius Chestnut, players that negatively impacted the Titans on some of those key early season special teams plays that there were a lot of moments where you thought, okay, just what does the special teams coach do about that? Right? About this guy missing that block or this player dropping this punt. So I think I would like that decision if they were to retain Colt Anderson because they like him as a coach. They think he can be a good special teams coordinator down the road, but it doesn't mean you continue to push the chips in with him right now and you bring in an experienced and respected guy.
There is a Twitter account at Jake and Ball that tweeted out some information on John Fossil yesterday. Cowboys special teams unit this year. Of course, he was most recently there. By the way, the Cowboys tried to keep him, but they don't have a head coach.
Yeah.
So because Jerry Jones kind of fumbled the bag on the head coaching search, he loses one of the most critical assistant coaches in the game. First in kick return touchdowns were the Cowboys. First in kick return average were the Cowboys. First in 40-plus yard returns on kickoffs were the Cowboys.
A lot of that is Kevontae Turpin.
Yeah, he's also excellent. But first in punt return touchdowns, 14th in punt return average, 8th in 20-plus yard punt returns, 11th in kick return average allowed, 13th in net punting, 2nd in field goals made, one of 3 teams to recover an onside kick in 2024. Because you now have to declare that onside kicks are coming, so the element of surprise is, of course, lost. I don't know how big an element of surprise there was to begin with onside kicks, but now it's even less surprising.
Isn't it crazy? There were 3 onside kicks recovered this year, and 2 of them were against the Ravens.
I didn't know that.
Including that one by the Cowboys. My favorite stat is special teams yards allowed of all of those, because Kevontae Turpin, incredible playmaker with the ball in his hands. So how much of that is a credit to the special teams coach? I don't know. But John Fossil, his resume kind of speaks for himself. He was the interim coach in L.A. when they let go of Jeff Fisher. So he was the interim head coach for the last 3 games of that season with the Rams. Look forward to talking to Coach Mack about him on Friday.
How many special teams coordinators do you know that have a 7-minute NFL Films feature specifically on them? Did you watch that, by the way?
Yeah, I did. I think players seem to special teams coordinators seem to be the best vibes coaches on multiple coaching staffs.
They can be.
Yeah, they can be. Like,
I don't think Colt Anderson had great vibes around him this year.
Saints players love Darren Rizzi. He's the interim coach when Dennis Allen got fired. Steelers players adore Danny Smith.
Who was the Raiders coach for a year?
Oh, Bisaccia.
Bisaccia?
Yeah,
Rich Bisaccia
went on to the Pack. I think he's the Packers special teams coach. He was so. They're just one of those coaches on the staff that players seem to gravitate towards, and Fossil has definitely been. I mean, in the college level, Tennessee's special teams coach Mike Eckler, dude's insane. Absolutely insane.
I feel like you have to be wired a certain kind of way to get guys excited about special teams, because the vast majority of players don't want to be over there.
For sure. Especially in the NFL.
No, when you get to the NFL level, when most of these guys have been the best college football players from their respective cities or towns or high schools or colleges, and then they're relegated to, 3rd string running back, and now your job, you're not a running back anymore, you're a special teams player. You got to have a certain kind of personality to get guys actually excited to play special teams. So the Titans have landed a good one. In John Fossil, they take advantage of the Cowboys' ineptitude and get a legitimate coach, somebody with actual veteran experience. And we're going to cover this, in the noon hour, things regarding Brian Callahan's learning on the job that was year 1 versus what you want to see him improve upon in year 2. Because the Fossil thing is an acknowledgement that, we got the special teams thing wrong. We need somebody who's a steady hand overseeing that, so it's not actively nuking us on any given game and nearly every week for basically until the month of December. It felt like the Titans special teams could cause you just catastrophic incident at any given point. It's an acknowledgement that they have to get better, that they're going to have stabilization there, and there's a couple of different places that Brian Callahan could stand to shore up, so we'll cover that at greater length at 12:20 today.
All right, the Chicago Bears have their man. Lions offensive coordinator Ben Johnson will be the head coach in Chicago. There's already reports coming out about his potential coaching staff. Dennis Allen is the lead candidate to be his defensive coordinator, the Saints' former head coach, the defensive coordinator of the Saints that was promoted to be head coach when Sean Payton left and was fired last year. He also reportedly is pursuing Darren Rizzi, who we just mentioned, to be his special teams coordinator in Chicago. But Ben Johnson goes to the Windy City to work with Caleb Williams.
Dan Orlovsky is the only voice out there that I think didn't want this to happen because of the differences in what Ben Johnson's offense was with Jared Goff versus what Caleb Williams is as a player, and how much is predicated on timing and rhythm of the offense. Now, every offense has to operate with a degree of timing and rhythm. Yeah, like it's not, there is no offense in the NFL that, or at any level of football, that really exists, maybe from high school, because high school's a mess, but at any major level of football, every offensive system is supposed to operate with timing and rhythm. if Ben Johnson's a good enough coach, then he'll adapt to the player because the player is the number one overall pick. But I just saw, up close and personal, a recent example of a coach incapable of adapting to a player. Now, that player, Will Levis, came with his own set of circumstances that made that far more difficult. I mean, the Will Levis thing just felt far more difficult than it ever needed to be off the bat. But also, Cosell was talking all year long on the podcast with me about, but the Titans' offense isn't really doing much to help him. Like, they're not really setting him up overwhelmingly for success. They're not adjusting these things to what the player is versus what they want to run schematically. So this is the kind of thing that you're up against when you hire an offensive coach, and Ben Johnson going to call the plays, one would expect, right? That's why they're hiring him. So first-year coach on paper, seems like a good match. These things are rarely ever as seamless as they feel like they should be.
And the band is breaking up in Detroit because Aaron Glenn seems to be on the cusp of getting a job somewhere. Yep. Ian Rappaport reported today that he is visiting the Jets today, and the goal, Rap Sheet says, is to keep him from leaving the building. Deal's not done. There are still particulars to discuss, but if all goes well, he could end today as the head coach of the New York Jets. If not, the Saints await, but Jonathan Jones of CBS is reporting that inclement weather has been in the forecast for New Orleans the last few days. Now interviews are being postponed. Talks are always ongoing, he says, but the decision by the Saints to wait could wind up costing them an in-person audience with Aaron Glenn if they can't get him in person in the very near future, and the Jets go ahead and offer him the head coaching job. So we'll see. The Jets might hire Aaron Glenn. Once again, they'd be going after a very well-respected defensive coordinator like they did with Robert Saleh. But either way, Dan Campbell's losing both coordinators in Detroit. So the very near future for the Lions is going to be fascinating as to what they do in response to losing two head coaches on each side of the ball.
Yeah, because that was,
or one head coach on each side of the ball.
To a much lesser extent, right? That happened with the Titans. Vrabel lost LaFleur, who went on to be the head coach of the Packers, and then Vrabel lost Arthur Smith after 2 seasons, who went on to be the head coach of the Falcons, and they were never able to kind of stop the bleeding on the brain drain, right? From the offensive side of the football, they never found sufficient enough replacements. And by the time, again, I don't think Tim Kelly was as bad as 2 years ago his offense looked. I think that their roster was in such disrepair that Tim Kelly was significantly hindered by the personnel that he was up against versus what the Titans may have had in 2020. Or even, does Todd Downing get zero? And listen, I understand nobody's caping up for Todd Downing. People do remember him being the offensive coordinator for the number 1 overall seed Tennessee Titans, right? Or does that just get completely washed away because, it didn't always look as pretty as you wanted it to, and then the following year was an abject disaster and he had a DUI?
Yeah, I think people...
Because I'm not saying that, he was a good coach or anything like that. I'm just saying, that was a thing that happened that people seem to very quickly forget.
There were frustrations with play calling, I still think, in the 2021 season, and Todd Downing was... there were multiple public enemies after that Bengals game, but Todd Downing was one of them.
No, well, there was really just the one.
I don't know. Todd Downing was definitely one of them. Yeah. But no, true. He was the offensive coordinator during that 12-5 season.
What's your next headline?
Man, that's just going to be interesting to watch. Vrabel never had both coordinators like that leave for head coaching jobs, right? He lost.
He kind of ran off Dean Pease.
Right.
Dean Pease was not a head coach candidate.
He lost Dean Pease, and then the year after that, he lost Arthur Smith. Mm-hmm. And then from there,
it goes.
So yeah, and then Pease went down to Atlanta. Yeah. So we'll see what the Lions do from here. Still, I'm sure a tough vibe up there in Detroit right now. Saquon Barkley, I wanted to get this in because he is 147 yards away from beating Terrell Davis's record of most rushing yards in a single season, including playoffs. Davis, in the 98 Super Bowl winning season with the Broncos, had 2,476 rush yards. Saquon is 147 yards back of that. Now, people will contend with that and say Saquon had the extra game. He didn't, because he didn't play in that extra game. And he actually will have had one less game, in theory, if the Eagles were to go to the Super Bowl, because the Broncos that year had the bye week. They were the 1 seed. So they did not play in the wild card round. So Saquon, if the Eagles are to win over the Commanders and go to the Super Bowl, will have a chance to beat Davis's record in less games, which would be unbelievable. For what it's worth, Derrick Henry is about 300 yards back of Davis. He rushed for 2,191 yards this year, including the playoffs.
Did you read the article on this on ESPN.com from Tim McManus, who's the Eagles reporter? He said that Barkley talked to a variety of different running backs from different generations about, for example, running in the elements. He talked with LaShawn McCoy, who had a 200-plus yard game against the Detroit Lions in an Eagles Snow Bowl victory back in 2013. He talked to Marshall Faulk about what it's like to play in the elements and anything that he should know, because obviously that game, by the way, the visuals from that after the fact, I mean, I know that it was cool to watch in real time, the snow game between the Eagles and the Rams, but like the high-definition camera angles of like various Saquon Barkley runs and especially the two long runs that he had in that game.
205 yards.
The ones
205.
The ones without the broadcasting calls.
Yeah,
just
the crowd.
With just the crowd noise, and then you hear him after the fact, are sick. Anyway.
He averaged 8 yards per carry. I mean, he was incredible in this game.
So 205 rushing yards were the fifth most in postseason history. Did you mention that? In a single game?
No, I did not mention that.
Okay.
No.
And as you mentioned, Eric Dickerson is the only player to have a 200 rushing yard game in the regular season and one in the playoffs in their career. So Saquon Barkley obviously not able to get the regular season record that he was hoping to achieve because they were wise to rest him, but now potentially he'll be able to break a regular season and postseason record, or a combined record there, and solidify himself en route to trying to win a Super Bowl.
Okay, I misspoke on math, not a strength.
Uh-oh.
If Saquon were to break the record this weekend and the Eagles lose, he will have done it in the exact same amount of games, but he will have one extra game if they go to the Super Bowl. He
didn't play in the regular season. Is that more on you for getting the math wrong, or is that more on me for not paying attention enough to correct you on the wrong math?
Everybody at fault. Yes. Got to play better, got to coach better. So, do you think he does? Do you think he does it? 147
against the Commies? Yeah, he can. Yeah, that's not a good run defense. I mean, I wouldn't say that he would get it easily. It's still damn near 150 yards in an NFL game. That's not an easy thing to accomplish, but sure as hell, he's made it look easy. I mean, this is Saquon. They're getting the best possible Saquon year. I mean, he's healthier than he's ever been, and the dividends of that. I mean, he's also playing on the best roster he's ever been on.
Yeah, that offensive line. I mean,
yeah, there's a bunch of different reasons why this may be the best version of Saquon Barkley that we ever see. But I'm so glad that we're getting it because he's electric.
Yeah, those are the headlines.
All right, very good. Coming up next, Belmont men's basketball coach Casey Alexander is going to join us. We'll talk a little hoops. I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone. So I don't know if Casey Alexander times these things up or if it's just an unfortunate circumstance that he joins the radio show seemingly after every time they beat the University of Evansville in Missouri Valley Conference play. The Belmont men's basketball team hosts Bradley tonight at the Curb Event Center. Belmont currently sitting at second place in the conference. What, are you just here to sideswipe me about not only my favorite basketball team, but my hometown basketball team, too?
He also beat your Indiana State Sycamores the other day.
Oh, I don't claim them. But
well, you claim every team in Indiana. You might as well throw Indiana State in there.
Just right? The ones that win. Hi, Casey.
How you guys doing? Now, this is, hey, no fun and games today. We're serious business.
Oh, okay. Yeah. What serious business do you, what do you have something you want to get off your chest? What's wrong?
No, just ready to play. We got a big
game day, Buck.
Yeah, absolutely. So, after defeating Evansville 85-82, that's sixth straight victory for you guys in that series. In particular, Bradley, another opportunity for you to continue to improve upon that record. What are you looking forward to about tonight's matchup?
Yeah, it'll be tough. Bradley, preseason number one selection, got the preseason player of the year. Really, really good team, top 50, 60 team in the country. So it's a tall order, but excited about playing it at home, and we've won 5 in a row, so things are better for us. And walking in with a little bit of confidence. We'll see how it goes.
5 in a row, and you guys are scoring over 84 points per game in those 5, Coach. I mean, number one scoring offense in the Missouri Valley, too. These games have been entertaining. They've been back and forth. Does that make it a little more or less stressful for you as head coach? Like, what's the more stressful type of game? Is it the high-scoring 84-82 game, or is it the nip-and-tuck KG 65-62 game?
Yeah, we like the high-scoring games better because that's typically more of who we are. It means the game is kind of flowing the way that we're used to playing. I appreciate you not mentioning the defensive end. If they're high-scoring games in the 80s or 90s, that also means the other team is scoring a lot. So that's clearly the end where we have to play better. Gosh, Bradley's 7th in the country offensively and number 1 in the country in three-point shooting. So we've got a real challenge on that end of the floor.
Casey Alexander, Belmont men's basketball coach, here with us on 104.5 The Zone. If you're looking to catch some local basketball tonight, you can watch their game or you can attend their game against Bradley just down the road. To your point about the defense, obviously, things ebb and flow throughout the course of a season, Coach, and you have to continue to make corrections, continue to make adjustments, make sure guys are sticking with their fundamentals and things like that. But from your perspective defensively, what are you most trying to fine-tune?
Yeah, it's just the consistency of it all. We've had some really good halves, some really good moments, some really good possessions when we had to have it. Just don't have quite the consistency that we need in order to do anything special when it comes to postseason play or being able to beat the best teams consistently. It's offense we can usually count on, and we've got to get ourselves to that level of confidence on the defensive end, which generally, as you just mentioned, I mean, it sounds way too simple, but the fundamentals are usually what it all boils down to, that and playing hard, of course.
Well, and to your point about things that you can rely upon on a consistent basis, Brigham Rogers is one of those players who's continued to give you strong performances night after night. How big an impact has he had on your lineup just across the board?
Yeah, he's been great for us, especially recently, this 5-game winning streak that we're on. He is he's playing the best basketball of his career, averaging, nearly a double-double during that time, really high percentage from on the offensive end, and that's never even really been his strength. But a little bit by necessity, we've been shorthanded in the post, and he's had to play more minutes and assume more responsibility, and great to see him rise to the occasion when we needed it the most.
Coach, now in year 3 in the Missouri Valley Conference, and this game, obviously, a win would tie you guys on record at the top of the conference at this point in the season. I'm just curious, how well acquainted are you in terms of play styles and identities of other coaches in this league compared to 3 years ago when you're still kind of feeling it out, maybe playing a lot of these teams for the first time? I mean, it feels like you look around college basketball and in the SEC, for example, so many veteran coaches that have played each other dozens and dozens of times. Now you're kind of getting to that point a little bit in the MVC. What has that process been like to just get to know your opponents better over time, and how has that helped you?
Yeah, far more familiar with everything. It's more than just styles. It's the travel. It's the arenas. It's the venues, what kind of crowds do you get at different places, and so forth and so on. Then you throw in the officiating that in the league is far different. So we're at a much more comfortable place in the league. But it's also changing all the time. We have 5 new coaches in our league this year. Josh Schertz left Indiana State and went to St. Louis, and Darren DeVries left Drake and went to West Virginia. And then we had a few that didn't make the cut, and they've got some new coaches. So it's still changing, but we're so much more in tune with who we are and what we need to do to be successful in this league than we were a couple of years ago.
You got a 6:30 p.m. tip-off tonight at the Curb Event Center. If you can't attend it live, you can catch it on ESPN Plus or the ESPN app, where you can hear Steve Lehman doing a little play-by-play for the Belmont men's basketball team. Casey Alexander, always good to join us when he's not sideswiping me about my basketball team on my Twitter DMs. Thank you, Casey.
You guys be good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. That's Casey Alexander. Man is ruthless. Just no peace. As if I'm not miserable enough about my basketball season. I got Casey in my DMs just harassing me.
You claim too many teams.
How many teams do I claim?
Too many teams.
It's just the 2.
Evansville, Indiana. You rooted for Notre Dame in the college football playoff.
Yeah.
I'm going to start just assigning every Indiana team to you. You are an Indiana State Sycamore fan.
How many more are there?
You are a noted Indianapolis Colts fan.
Yeah. That is one of the funnier allegations that I get, because I've never actually watched a Colts game that the Titans didn't play in, because I've only covered the Titans, and they play in the Colts division.
Big game tonight at the Curb, 6:30. Like you said, big basketball day in the Volunteer State. Vanderbilt on the road at Alabama. We talked about that with Mark Byington yesterday, defending Mark Sears.
From yesterday's podcast, if you missed it in the 10 o'clock hour. Huge weekend for Vanderbilt athletics, both Shea Ralph and the Lady Commodores and Mark Byington's men's basketball team getting the dub over Tennessee to the detriment of Jackson and Lucas.
Yes, so they go to face a top 5 Alabama team on the road in Tuscaloosa.
To give the Vanderbilt men's basketball coach the middle finger on the way out the door yesterday on Zoom. It was very, very disrespectful of you.
You also claim Tennessee. That's another team you claim.
Yes. No, I don't claim Tennessee.
Yeah, you wear more.
Oh, when they were going to the baseball national championship, you were claiming Tennessee.
True.
Well, yeah, they sent us T-shirts. I'm not going to not root for them. If you send me a T-shirt, I'll root for you.
You wear more power tees into work than I think Jackson or myself.
That's not true. Jackson took off a Tennessee sweatshirt yesterday to reveal a Tennessee T-shirt underneath.
Go Vols.
Tennessee's back home tonight. 6 is the tip-off, 5:30 pregame, Vol Network coverage on the Zone. We'll kind of preempt the last half hour of 3HL. Hosting a top 15 Mississippi State team. This is a big week for Tennessee after that loss against Vanderbilt. They go to Auburn, number 1 Auburn on Saturday. So it feels like it's going to be really easy in the SEC this year when you're not playing your best ball to let one loss turn into 2, turn into 3. Tennessee's got to avoid that this week. It's good to be home, but I feel like that Vanderbilt game maybe exposed a couple of weaknesses, like what this offense is when Zakai Ziegler's not on the floor. Inefficient, kind of disconnected, turning the ball over. And when Ziegler's not out there, and Rick Barnes basically said this after the Vandy game, he sat him because of early foul trouble. You're basically just trying to keep the game close defensively until you can get Ziegler back in to get back on track offensively. There's no Dalton Connect to just give the ball to when Zakai has to go to bench for, maybe an injury or a foul trouble, whatever it might be, and just let Dalton just take over. They don't have that this year. So that'll be something to kind of monitor down the line this year, see if that weakness comes back around, point guard depth, when Ziegler's not on the floor. But, yeah, big game tonight when they host the Bulldogs.
We now have an official time for Mike Bergonzi's introductory press conference. It'll be during the radio show tomorrow. Now, here's what we have to figure out, because I'd like to attend that in person. Are you capable of handling things for an hour while I run to a press conference?
It'll be us and the Normus family.
We will be
how it went last time.
Glad to be rid of you, I would say.
Chad Brinker's also going to speak at 10 a.m.
There you go.
Which is another thing that I would like. So let's work out the logistics of that after the show, because I have plenty of questions. I honestly think I have as many questions for Chad Brinker as I do Mike Bergonzi.
If Brinker's speaking at 10 and Bergonzi is speaking at 11, then should we assume Brinker will be taking questions?
Yeah. Oh, no, for sure. Yeah, no, it's 2 separate media availabilities in 2 separate spaces.
Yes.
So Chad Brinker is going to take questions from the media at 10 a.m., which will then be followed by an 11 a.m. press conference with new Titans general manager Mike Borgonzi. I don't know if Brinker is going to also be involved in the 11 a.m. press conference or if he'll just give an introductory statement and allow Mike to then make his own statements and take questions after the fact.
And it doesn't say anything about Callahan either.
I do not have anything about Callahan in my email.
Being available tomorrow. But okay, there you go.
All right. So we will work out the logistics of that because I assume we'll carry both.
Oh, we sure will.
Yeah, that would make the most sense. Oh, what'd you just say?
The Brinker is a quote-only session.
So that's not going to be available
I see
to
that.
be carried.
Yes, there's an asterisk. It is a quote-only session, no video or audio for air or posting. They will provide a transcript. Live tweeting will be allowed, but Borgonzi will be aired. So we will carry Borgonzi live. We will not carry Brinker live.
Why is that, I wonder? I mean, I know Callahan, Glennon would dub them breakfasts with Brian.
Yes, in training camp.
For a period of time, but I don't know. What's the harm of putting that? I mean, whatever. They'll make whatever decisions they feel necessary, and we'll cover it. At least we can get some answers out of that because Chad Brinker has, of course, many questions that need to be answered about the structure of this thing, and then Mike Borgonzi's press conference. So you will not hear the Chad Brinker press conference on the radio show because apparently that's not allowed to be videotaped or audio streamed. But Mike Borgonzi's press conference, fair game. You can also watch it on Zone TV. So if you would like to watch it, you can subscribe to the YouTube channel or on Twitch or on Facebook Live or on Twitter. Follow 104.5 The Zone, and you can physically see your new general manager during the course of the radio show tomorrow as he takes questions from the media. Coming up next, we talked about John Fossil, the new Titans special teams coordinator. We will get into the ins and outs of that specifically. I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone.
12 o'clock, good afternoon from the 104.5 The Zone studios. I'm Lucas Panzica. The Tennessee Titans are reportedly hiring John Bones Fossil as their new special teams coordinator, according to multiple reports. Fossil most recently served as the special teams coordinator for the Dallas Cowboys. The Titans also put out an advisory just a few minutes ago. New Titans GM Mike Borgonzi will have his introductory press conference tomorrow at 11 a.m. Central Time. Titans president of football operations Chad Brinker also will meet with the media at 10 a.m. tomorrow. You can hear the Borgonzi press conference live right here on The Zone. In other NFL news, the Bears are reportedly hiring Lions offensive coordinator Ben Johnson to be the next head coach in Chicago. College football season wrapped up last night, and the Ohio State Buckeyes are national champs for the first time since 2015. 34-23, the final over Notre Dame at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. The final AP poll is out. Tennessee comes in at number 9. College hoops action tonight. 6th-ranked Tennessee back home, hosting number 15 Mississippi State. Tip-off at 6. Vol Network coverage starts at 5:30 on The Zone. Vanderbilt hits the road at number 4 Alabama tonight for a 6 p.m. tip. And the Belmont Bruins play host to Bradley, looking to draw level at the top of the Missouri Valley, tipping off at 6:30 at the Curb. The Nashville Predators finish out their homestand tonight, looking for a season-best 4th straight win. They host the Sharks. Puck drop at 6:30. For all your foundation repairs and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once, and your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Okay, so noon hour underway, last hour of the show. We officially have a time on the Mike Borgonzi introductory press conference. He will be made available to media at 11 a.m. tomorrow. We will carry that press conference live for you. Lucas and Jackson will be here at the studio. I will be there at the facility because not only is Mike Borgonzi going to speak in front of television cameras and microphones, but Chad Brinker is also going to be available, but not in front of television cameras and microphones. It is a tweet-only, quote-only session with the Titans president of football operations prior to the general manager's press conference. Now, I mean, there could be any number of reasons why they're doing that. And any number of reasons why they're doing that the way that they're doing that. I'd just be curious why they wouldn't do them both at once, or maybe they just want to make the Borgonzi press conference just about him. And I think that, I'm glad that they're doing one before the other, certainly Brinker before Borgonzi, because there's plenty of, I have way more questions for Brinker, to be honest with you, about, hey, what the hell happened here? Why does it look the way that it does? Have things changed between the time that you guys fired Rand Carthon and said that you had veto power and the time that you hired the general manager that now reportedly has final say over the roster? There's a ton of ground to cover with Chad Brinker. Unfortunately for the audience, it sounds like, well, I'll just have to relay that to you myself with the quotes and the tweets that we have to work with. Apparently there will be no Twitter video allowed in that session either. So we will cross that bridge when we get to it, and we'll do it all. So I'll check in from the facility tomorrow at 10:45? We'll plan on that.
That'll work.
After the Chad Brinker thing, then we'll carry the Borgonzi press conference at 11 a.m., and then I'll just come back here and we'll do the rest of the show and react to what the general manager had to say. There's a comment on YouTube. By the way, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. Here's a good question for the audience if you want to interact via the live stream or call us. What's the biggest question that you want either of these men to answer? Chad Brinker, what's the biggest question you as a Titans fan have for president of football operations, Chad Brinker, and for the man who is going to report directly to him, general manager Mike Borgonzi? You may have questions of both. You may have questions of only one, but I'd be curious to know from your standpoint, 615-737-1045, what's the biggest question you have for the two heads of state, for lack of a better term, that are directly involved with the Titans front office and trying to reconstruct this roster that has been down tremendous for the better part of 4 years at this point in time, and ahead of a draft where they have the number 1 overall pick. So with everything that we have to cover between now and then, they also have hired John Fossil, who is the former special teams coordinator of the Dallas Cowboys. We talked about in the headline segment. Fossil is an immediate upgrade over Colt Anderson. Colt Anderson may be fired, but last I checked, he was still being retained by the organization as Fossil comes in and gets to decide what he may want to or not want to keep from the current existing structure as he comes in here to revamp. Feels like too strong a term for the special teams, but just basically to get it up off the ground. It's the worst special teams unit in the league in a variety of different categories, in a vast majority of categories last year, other than field goal kicking. And I don't think Nick Folk didn't miss a single extra point. He missed one field goal, not a single extra point, and then missed, the last 2 games?
Yeah, he was great. With
an injury, and has been great for 2 seasons. And it sounds like it's his intention to continue kicking in the NFL, though he is technically he's an unrestricted free agent. Him and Morgan Cox, both unrestricted free agents this year, so that's not an inconsequential part of the roster.
Folk is 40 years old.
Yes. So they will have to figure out whether it makes more sense to just bring Nick Folk back or if they want to roll the dice with another kicker after stabilizing the kicking situation for the first time since 1.5 good years of Randy Bullock. Fossil coming in here as one of the most well-regarded individuals in the special teams business in the league. He's done it for a variety of different organizations, the Ravens, the Rams, most recently the Cowboys. Now he'll come to the Titans. He's only available because Dallas allowed the situation to expire between Mike McCarthy and the Cowboys. Dallas currently behind the 8 ball, at very least, in their coaching hire cycle. They missed the first window to interview people like Ben Johnson and who else has been? Aaron Glenn. Now they're playing catch up on that. There was the odd flirtation. The Deion Sanders thing seems to have totally died down.
Yes, as expected. They are interviewing Brian Schottenheimer, who is their in-house candidate, the offensive coordinator.
Exciting.
Yeah, we've seen Jerry do the in-house thing before.
Okay.
And Jason Garrett lasted for quite some time.
So
I expect Kellen Moore will be a candidate as well.
Who has very thorough familiarity with that organization, as we pointed out last week, as both a player and a former coach for the Dallas Cowboys. What's the most attractive job left on the board? Because Bears now have a head coach. Patriots have a head coach. Been pretty slow. Yesterday was a huge wave of coaching cycle news because the one thing that you did leave out, including John Fossil coming in to at least replace what we know is Colt Anderson is not going to be the special teams coordinator for the Titans. What we do not know is whether that person will have a job with this organization moving forward, or if he will, or if Fossil will deem it necessary or important to retain Colt Anderson in a role as a special teams assistant potentially.
Yeah, I left out the fact that the Colts are going to hire former Bengals defensive coordinator Lou Anarumo as their new defensive coordinator.
Don't think that's great news for the AFC South. Lou Anarumo is a very talented defensive coordinator, and he is somebody who just honestly had no talent left in Cincinnati. They lost so many pieces and parts as that team went to a Super Bowl. Guys got paid to go elsewhere. The core of that team seemed to mostly splinter on the defensive side of the ball. They've been able to hold the fort. T. Higgins will be a free agent this year, but they've been able to hold the fort offensively with paying guys like Burrow. Now Jamar Chase's contract is up. They were okay to let Joe Mixon go because they got sufficient enough replacement level value out of the running backs that they brought in.
Chase Brown had a nice season.
Absence, yeah. Chase Brown had a really nice season.
I think they did more than hold the fort offensively this year. Goodness, they carried the load.
Well, Burrow was excellent, but I'm talking about in terms of retaining personnel.
Yeah, in terms of, yeah, I hear what you're saying.
And the Colts, they're not, the Colts are a middling football team right now, but I do think that they have a solid defense. Their secondary is probably the most questionable, but that front is something that definitely Lou Anarumo can work with.
Did Trey Hendrickson end up leading the NFL in sacks at the end of the year?
I think so.
That's crazy that they had the NFL. I know they lacked a lot of talent across the board, but that they had the sack lead. Yeah, he did. 17 and a half sacks. Unbelievable.
It really is crazy. And, speaking of the Bengals and attrition there, the T. Higgins conversation is something Titans fans are definitely going to want to have. But doesn't it feel like they've never been further from signing a player like T. Higgins after what last offseason was and what the stated mantra of this offseason is going to be draft, develop, retain.
And Ridley's under contract. Wide receiver remains a huge need.
I mean, it's really Ridley and what? Because NWI is a
free agent,
unrestricted free agent. So, I mean, Traylon Burks coming off injured reserve.
Tyler Boyd was a 1-year deal, correct?
Tyler Boyd, a 1-year deal. I don't know. I wouldn't rule out anything necessarily, I guess, but Tyler Boyd is not somebody who I would expect to be back or for there to be a huge push to retain him. But without Westbrook-Akina, I don't know if there's a bigger push to bring a Tyler Boyd back. If Tyler Boyd even wants to come back, I'm sure he could probably go and play for somewhere else like a la Robert Woods and go find success elsewhere after it not going necessarily to plan here with the Titans coming over with Brian Callahan from the Cincinnati Bengals. Jaquan Jackson also in that receiver room, but I don't know if they're going to, well, maybe Fossil will find something to do with him on special teams that Colt Anderson wasn't able to. Like, who's the biggest reclamation project on special teams? Is it not Jaquan Jackson? If that's possible.
Right, like you don't really get anything out of cutting Jaquan Jackson.
No, I mean, he's a 6th-round pick. 6th-round picks have been cut. Like, that's not the end of the world. If you're a day 3 pick, basically 5th round on down, like, it's not really that shocking to me if you last 1 or 2 years with any one given organization. The James Williams is an interesting figure in all this because James Williams is a quality special teams player this year. I thought he got better. Cedric Gray is somebody who could potentially be worked with. Obviously, he did not have the season that he wanted to with missing the amount of time that he did, and then once he finally got in there.
They'll also get back Colton Dow next year.
Colton Dow, I don't recall him being a huge... no, didn't he get injured on special teams? A pretty good special teams player his rookie year?
Did he get injured on special teams? He played a lot on special teams his rookie year.
I don't remember exactly, so I don't speak out of turn.
Jackson says he did.
Okay. So we will see what happens with the special teams unit under John Fossil. All we know is that is a substantial upgrade in terms of experience, coaching acumen than what the Titans previously had. Doesn't mean that Colt Anderson can't stick around and potentially improve and maybe, get another opportunity elsewhere if his coaching path is going to continue down the special teams route. One would assume that it would, but they'll make that determination at a later date, it would seem, and John Fossil is going to be the savior of the special teams unit because all he's done is have success. I don't want to set the bar too high for a guy who's just technically gotten the job, but I think it's reasonable to have, of all the things that I would be most optimistic about, like immediately in 2025, it would be that John Fossil is going to be able to stop the bleeding at the very least.
And look, again, they stopped the bleeding during the season. Like, I do think if Colt Anderson is retained, there are going to be Titans fans that are yelling about why are they even keeping him in the building. But I do think there is some credit to be given to Colt Anderson for the way they adjusted. And they did stop the bleeding. It stopped crippling them. And it was a low bar, and I understand that. But what was the last game that we came in here on Monday talking about special teams? Here we go again.
Maybe the Texans
game
after the 80-yard return.
Yeah, special teams was a reason the Texans were even in that game.
Yeah.
And that was week 12.
So, a good portion of the season, the majority of the season for sure.
Oh, for sure.
But, I mean, they never did anything beyond stop the bleeding, right? It just simply, equalized a little bit to where they were no longer just an unholy nightmare to where you feared anytime the Titans had to go on special teams because of what might happen to them or against them in that particular phase of the game. Speaking of things that happened to the Titans coaching staff last year, Brian Callahan, certainly a bumpy road through his first venture as an NFL head coach. You're going to hear from him from his locker room cleanout day press conference on a couple of different things that he would like to improve upon. And we'll ask you the question, what do you want to see, Brian? Understanding that you want to see more wins, that I get. What do you most want to see the Titans improve upon from Brian Callahan's standpoint heading into year 2 under this Titans coach? We'll talk about that next on Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone.
If you're anything like me, your happy place is just hanging out with a few friends with a big bucket of chicken and watching a football game. And it dawned on me last night watching the national championship, we're running out of opportunities to do that this football season. In fact, we have about 3 more with the NFC and AFC championships coming up this weekend. And then, of course, the Super Bowl. So, with your final opportunities to get some friends together, sit down, watch a meaningful football game with a big bucket of chicken, what better way to celebrate it than with Hattie B's, a family-run restaurant serving up your favorite Southern food and authentic Nashville hot chicken. Hand-breaded, cooked to order, at your spice level, hot or not, whatever works for you with your favorite piece of chicken, tender sandwich wings, or the half bird. Your favorite side, they do have the best in town. Southern greens, the pimento mac and cheese, my personal favorite, bacon cheese grits, and so much more. Hattie B's has so many options to bring the heat to your event, even if it's a watch party with some buddies. Go to HattieB.com, download the Hattie B's app today. You get a free dessert just by doing so. Also, make it your lunch break spot. Any one of their 7 locations, the factory at Franklin, Lower Broadway, Melrose, Midtown, Nashville West, and the Nashville Airport. Be sure to go to HattieB.com today for delivery.
Welcome back to the show. We are fueled by Hattie B's Hot Chicken, the best hot chicken anywhere. Not just in Middle Tennessee. It is lunchtime. Consider the best hot chicken in the world for your next meal. HattieB.com for more information, or download the app and get a free dessert the first time that you do the mobile delivery via the Hattie B's app. So, as you know, or in case you missed it, Mike Borgonzi's press conferences at 11 a.m. tomorrow. We'll carry it live for you. I got many questions about that. When is it happening? Why hasn't it happened yet? What's going on? When Rand Carthon's press conference, I think, was at the very end of the week that they hired him, because, of course, the San Francisco 49ers were going to an NFC Championship game when the Titans hired Rand Carthon to be the general manager. And now, famously, the Chiefs are in the 7th consecutive AFC Championship game. And it's fair to assume that Mike Borgonzi is not just going to up and quit on them in the middle of this. I would assume that he would be in attendance at the AFC Championship game this weekend.
I would assume so. And it's not like that's crazy travel going back and forth between Kansas City and Nashville. A lot harder to do that between San Fran and Nashville. Rand Carthon was officially hired on January 18th, 2024. The Mike Borgonzi news dropped January 17th, 2025.
How much is it worth to you for me to ask Mike Borgonzi if he's ever slept on a plane?
Oh. I get the bit, but make better use of your questions. There are more important questions to be asked.
Do you think it gets asked at all? Do you think anybody asks whether or not he slept on a plane, or left a pro day early, or whatever else weasel behavior was being documented as they tossed Rand Carthon out after 2 years on the job? Either way, we'll do the press conference tomorrow. The biggest question is why? Why this job? Why does this make the most sense for you? What level of assurances did you need to have to take this job, given that you were expected to have options? And I'm sure that maybe he'll talk about the options. Maybe he won't. The other thing that I want to ask Brinker is, did you get declined by anybody, or was Borgonzi your first choice the whole way through? One offer, one acceptance. That's the thing. Because, again, there was reason to believe that there was significant interest in John Eric Sullivan. But they ultimately go with the best general manager candidate on the market, and that was Mike Borgonzi, the assistant general manager of the Chiefs. So, not related, well, I guess related in some form or fashion, but Brian Callahan coming in under Mike Borgonzi, or I guess Mike Borgonzi coming in over Brian Callahan. Did you notice that Dane Brugler talked about that, about how important it's going to be for those two to start off on the right foot as far as the Callahan tenuousness goes? Which, of course, we knew. It's always important for a general manager and a head coach to start off on the right foot, which is why the Rand Carthon, Mike Vrabel thing was doomed from the jump.
Well, and Borgonzi comes from a franchise where the head coach has significant input in Andy Reid.
Callahan has input, but it's not, This is more Borgonzi's show now than it is Callahan's, right? We all agree on this.
Oh yeah, I would think so. It is in his job description.
Marciano on YouTube, where you can interact with the show, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch, or call us, 615-737-1045, asks, it's quotes only for Brinker. No video or audio. Is that normal? No, not necessarily. It's not unheard of. It's not unprecedented. Callahan did a couple of those during training camp, but then he stopped. I don't know when the Breakfast with Brian thing, I think the Breakfast with Brian thing was only a training camp experience.
I don't know if around the league, that's the thing. Every team, every front office executive handles media availability stuff differently.
Well, and also, based on everywhere else that you're reading, this is a different structure than the vast majority of NFL teams. So they're kind of wading their way through the water. Listen, I'm glad that he's answering questions at all, because one of the biggest questions that I had is this person going to have final say? And is this GM just going to answer to Chad Brinker, and Chad Brinker not going to have to answer questions about a roster that he might have control over? So I'm grateful that they're making him available, because there are plenty of ground to be covered with Brinker before we meet with Borgonzi an hour after the fact. But no, it's not necessarily normal. I just don't know how normal a president of football operations giving a press conference at all is, though it's become more commonplace where the league is requiring assistant GMs to be made available at certain points in the year. So to get them out there, to get their names out there, to get their personalities, their voices on certain topics as they interview for different jobs. So it's more commonplace now in the last 3 or 4 years than it's ever been.
So we don't know if we're going to hear from Brian Callahan tomorrow.
No, I'm assuming not, because he's not in the email.
Mm-hmm. He's not in the email.
I mean, I assume he'd be there, but
the last we heard from Brian Callahan was the Monday after the regular season finale against Houston. And it was interesting to hear his answer about the type of feedback that he had gotten from players in their end of season meetings on that Monday morning before he met with the media. And then there was a follow-up here about whether or not he would consider giving up play calling as we talk about Brian Callahan going from year 1 to year 2 as a head coach.
I just what things were good, what guys liked, what did they respond to, what can I do better? How can I be better for them? That's my job, is to find ways to be better for our football team. And one of the things that I know I need to do a better job of is because of the difficulty of being in charge of calling plays and running the offense, is I spend a lot of time on offense, and I got to do a better job of spending my time more with the guys on the other sides of the ball on special teams and on defense, and just making myself more available and visible to them. Even though I spend a lot of time with the offensive guys, one of the things I need to do a much better job of moving forward is still continuing to build the same style relationships with the guys on defense as well. So that's something that my first year and trying to get the offense off the ground, need to do a better job of that moving forward.
Is there potential in that, Brian, that you wouldn't call plays at any point?
That I would not. I think I'm humble enough and open enough that if that's a change that need to be made, I would make it. Right now, though, I do feel good about that process. I love calling plays on game day. It's part of where I find a lot of joy in the football process. But, I'm never going to close the door on something if it makes us better. But as of right now, no, I continue to anticipate to see myself calling plays and doing that part of the operation, because it is the part that I enjoy quite a bit, and I love game days calling plays. So, but again, if it makes us a better football team and I need to devote my resources elsewhere, I'm always open to those thought processes. So, but right now, no, I don't anticipate that changing.
So that's Brian Callahan on the Monday after their season ended, locker room cleanout day, recap press conference. That when I talked about, not necessarily having a full grasp of the locker room, that's kind of what I was referencing. And it's understandable that a first-year coach would have that difficulty, that hill to climb, right?
Probably not a unique challenge for an offensive play-calling head coach or a defensive play-calling head coach. I would
think any first-time head coach, because what are you before you're a head coach? Almost always. You're a coordinator. You're used to working with one side of the ball. Yeah, you'll coach against the other side of the ball or practice against the other side of the ball, but you're not in those meetings as in depth, one would imagine. You're not dealing with the other side of the ball's personnel on a day-to-day basis. As the head coach, you have to have it all. You have to have it all, a grasp of everything. And I don't think it's unfair to say that he didn't have a grasp on everything last year, because he just told you why. He tried to get the offense off the ground. And then the Levis thing happened, and there's a variety of different reasons why it couldn't get off the ground, of which I don't think he's absolved of, but certainly Levis made it a great deal harder to get where they need, or were trying to get as quickly as they were trying to get there. And things fall through the cracks. It's understandable, right? Whether it can be understandable, but not acceptable. And acknowledgement of that is the first step. Improvement upon that is the second step.
I hear that, and I feel like he's talking about from a game planning standpoint. He addresses the team. Like, the defensive guys hear from him all the time.
Yeah, but that's not...
He just might not be in the meeting rooms.
That's not personal relationships.
Yeah, but I don't see that as a reason to not give Brian Callahan credit for keeping the team together. And look, that is the most baseline thing, right? Like the they never quit, like they're professionals. We understand that. But we have seen teams, we have seen that friction play out onto the field multiple times in just recent years. Nathaniel Hackett, Josh McDaniels, players yelling at each other on the sideline, a clear toxicity that spills out in front of everybody.
I wouldn't say that it was toxic, but I also don't know that he had a full grasp of the situation, because he was focused on his thing, and that allowed some things to slip through the cracks. Again, addressing, you know how many guys are in team meeting?
No, I know.
70, 80-something people, including coaches, that are in that meeting, and you're not, I mean, yeah, you'll ask questions of guys. I mean, that's I don't know if they do like the Friday Teach tape thing that Vrabel did for a while, where you're pointing some things out on film and then having a guy answer a question, and maybe it's about the other side of the ball, and if you don't know it, you get burned or whatever. But like, all coaches have some manner of addressing the team on a regular basis, but it's about developing those personal relationships that takes it to the next level. Because what is as important as anything for a coach to have from his players? Belief and trust.
Yeah.
You have to know that person. You have to know that person, like actually know that person. It's not like he's an unknown commodity to them. He's not sitting up in some ivory tower like Amy, for example. It's probably harder for them to get to know Amy than it is to get to know Brian Callahan. But things slipped through the cracks. He is saying that is feedback that he's getting directly from players, Lucas.
Yeah, yes.
That's what players are telling him. Hey, we got to know you more.
For sure. No, I get that. But look, you've had a bad season when a head coach is getting credit for, hey, well, the team never quit, right? They kept playing. The effort was there. Like, if those are the things we're talking about after a year, it's been a rough ride. And it has been a 3-14 ride. But you can find out very quickly what somebody has or doesn't have as a head coach in year one when that doesn't happen, when it goes in the opposite direction. And that didn't happen for Brian Callahan. It doesn't mean he's going to be a great head coach. We still don't have a final answer on him. But we did not get the answer of he can't keep a team together in a terrible 3-14 season where you end up with the number 1 overall
They
pick.
didn't swing on one another at 3-14.
Sure,
right?
and like I
that.
said, it's the most baseline stuff.
Okay.
But we do see it happen. We do.
No, I know.
And that's what tells us, okay, this guy probably,
but you're talking
probably not
about
cut out
a
to be a
very
head coach.
specific, you're talking about a very, very specific examples of coaches who didn't make it through their first year.
Mm-hmm.
What was Hackett didn't make it through his first year. And that's
Neither
just
did
because,
McDaniels.
That's just because McDaniel had previous head coaching experience. He'd been the coach
that
of the
didn't go well either.
It didn't go well either. But like, McDaniel was not on the list of first-year head coaches fired in their first season, like first time ever. Hackett was, and he joins the likes of Urban Meyer and Bobby Petrino, who had less reputable reasons other than just, Hackett just appeared to be awful at the job.
Well, Petrino wasn't fired, but I get what you're saying.
Yeah. So with everything right now.
Or I guess McDaniels, that was in year 2. That was in year 2
with the Raiders?
Happened. Yes. So they went 6-11 in year 1, and it was midway through year 2 that you started
because
the tension.
He came in with Ziegler.
Yeah.
Ziegler made it through the first year, then got fired November of the second year, and then McDaniels got fired after Ziegler, yeah?
I believe so.
Reportedly, future Titans assistant general manager Dave Ziegler.
According to Albert Breer.
Cross that bridge when we get to it.
I'm sure that'll be a question tomorrow.
It should be. Among other people who should be and are being considered for that job. And, it doesn't have to just be one job based on the structure that they've continued. I mean, they just keep creating more jobs to handle the personnel department. And listen, I'm good with that. If you have people dedicated to specific areas that know what they have one job, you do this thing, it's under your umbrella, you get it done, we'll take care of our respective sides of the equation here, and we'll do the best job possible because we've delegated the best possible way. In a perfect world, that's how this would work. Obviously, they tried that in several different iterations, and it hasn't worked. So maybe this time around, they'll have a more refined version of that. Craig Baxter on Facebook Live says, can Brian Callahan still get guys to buy in this season? Sure, all they have to do is win. I mean, I say all they have to do is win, as if winning's some easy thing when they made winning look impossible last year. But to Lucas's point, I never got the sense from the locker room, and nor would they say this publicly, but you got some pretty emotive personalities in that locker room right now that may or may not be willing to disclose more than they should at certain points. Never got the vibe that they were like out on Callahan, that they didn't think that, this guy doesn't know what the hell he's doing. That was never a sense that I got. Now, that's a very, like you
extreme.
Said, broad. Well, it's a very broad thing for me to say. Yeah, I'm in the locker room, I don't know, 3 days every week for 18 weeks plus training camp. Like, I never got that sense.
Yeah, and it would have to be extreme for you to get the sense from players in the locker room.
Like Hackett, right? Where
like Hackett
you
or
see
McDaniels.
these things with your own eyes, and it's like,
he does not have control of this
something
thing.
deeply wrong here.
Yeah, or Urban, right.
So that's never been an allegation that I've made of Brian Callahan. My biggest criticism is that the biggest thing that he was supposed to do here, he failed spectacularly at, which was develop the quarterback that they decided to build around. That is also equal parts the quarterback's fault, that he put them in a position where ultimately he had to be benched, and the injury derailed whatever development might have come in those 3 games that he missed. But there's no question that Brian Callahan was here hired for a specific set of skills, Liam Neeson style, and never really got it off the ground the way that he wanted to.
The question is that Brian Callahan? Is that Will Levis? Is it a little bit of both? Because we've seen
there's a little bit of both.
It go both ways. Well, we don't know that yet. Because
about the development? I got Greg telling me every week they're not doing a good enough job around Will Levis.
Sure.
That's people much smarter than me.
And I value Greg's opinion 100%. But the 49ers couldn't get anything out of Trey Lance, right? Nobody's questioning Kyle Shanahan as a quarterback developer, a play caller. They could get nothing out of Trey Lance. People have definitely
questioned Kyle Shanahan at various points in his career. I think that's a little revisionist.
Okay, sure. Okay, yes. In Super Bowls, we're talking about his play calling in Super Bowls.
In game, yeah.
But Kyle Shanahan, upper tier quarterback developer, play caller, situational offensive guy in the NFL.
He does have a weird type though. Like Kirk Cousins, it totally makes sense that he would look at Trey Lance and be like, "Oh, I can do something with this. I can do this with Nick Mullins," respectfully.
Couldn't get anything out of Trey Lance. He could out of the 7th round pick in Brock Purdy.
It's crazy.
And Trey Lance, nobody's gotten anything out of Trey Lance since. He got trotted out there for a preseason game in Dallas and threw 5 picks. So we know that's probably Trey Lance. Could he have a resurgence at some point? Sure. Doesn't seem likely at this point. Trey Lance, probably not an NFL quarterback. We don't know that yet about Will Levis. We also don't know how that stacks up in regards to Brian Callahan, and we're going to get an answer on it because he's going to be able to, theoretically, he's going to get a young quarterback if that's the direction they go with the number 1 overall pick. And we'll get to see that development take place with a quarterback that maybe he has more input on. So we will get an answer on it. How much of that was on him versus Levis, we don't know exactly.
There's a comment on Twitch that says Buck needs to keep count of how many times collaboration is said tomorrow. Over, under 1.5.
Over.
I don't think so. I think they're avoiding any and all buzzwords. I think that organization, well, I mean, listen, they'll create buzzwords because football people speak in cliches. It's impossible for them not to. There's only so many things that can be said about football teams. But they're trying to avoid, any baggage that comes with them from last season. Everybody who was doing the interview circuit last year is sure as hell not everybody, the scope of people, right? You're going to hear from a lot less people associated with the Titans because they botched it. They have all kinds of quotes that you can hit them over the head with after the fact because they were awful last year, and nobody cares what you have to say at 3-14, which is why I think they're going to keep a very collective low profile as an organization, other than Callahan, because he's contractually obligated to speak to us on a regular basis. And I think the general manager has to make somewhere in the area of 4 to 5 media appearances every year between Combine, Senior Bowl, pre-draft, post-draft, all this kind of stuff. So, but I would expect, and frankly, I would hope for, if I was a fan, now obviously as a media person, I want as many quotes as you can give me, but even I acknowledge that those things don't help you win football games, and that just focus on what's the most important thing, focus on the product on the field, and I think they got away from that last year.
Brian Callahan was asked another question in his season wrap-up about just kind of evaluating himself as a head coach. Should we play that coming up next?
We will. I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone. We'll see what kind of fire we get from tomorrow's press conferences. Maybe it'll be pretty even-keeled. Maybe there will be, a little fur flying because this team's got a lot to answer for, man. And listen, the best thing that they've done is get the most qualified general manager candidate available to come in here and give them some credibility where they have sorely lacked it, at least in the last year. It speaks to how quickly, a team can have momentum in the right direction like the Tennessee Titans did. 6 consecutive winning seasons, AFC Championship appearance. But those things are very fleeting, and it can all come crashing down very quickly when you've made as many decisions as this team has made to their detriment. Now they're trying to get it right. Starts tomorrow with Chad Brinker at 10 a.m. in a setting that is not available for audio or video, but we will, I'll zoom in from the facility, and then we'll do Mike Borgonzi's press conference at 11 a.m., which we will carry for you. My biggest question for him is why? Like, why this job? And I don't take that however you want it, but genuinely, I'm curious, what were the conversations like? Why is this more appealing than everybody else in the league seemed to think that it was, including the league, that did their own investigation on the veracity of the actual general manager position that the Tennessee Titans had available.
Yeah, and came to a conclusion.
Yeah, and they were cleared of, okay, seems legit, go get him, Tiger. And they got the guy, to their credit.
I truly wonder how much more we're going to see this around the NFL, this structure of football executive, then general manager, down to head coach.
Well, listen, I've never taken my biggest... Well, I had a bunch of criticisms of John Robinson at the end. Obviously, we all did. But, one of the biggest criticisms that I had is, John, why are you doing all this? All of these things that are not necessarily pertinent to your job as general manager, why is all of this under your specific umbrella? And why are you worried about, what the team's tweeting at every given point? And I understand that you don't want, the cart before the horse, and social media messaging can put people in positions that they have to answer questions for after the fact. I know they're not thrilled with the team mom thing now because we've hit them over the head with that a bunch of times with the Amy Adams Strunk thing. Seemed like a good idea at the time. Now it seems less appealing. So it's all, all these pieces and parts have to work together, but they have to get back to the most important thing, which is the product on the field. And, the stadium became bigger than the football team last year. And you understand that the stadium is a huge product and the football team was ghastly. And so it made it very easy to ignore the football team and be like, well, why the hell would I buy or upcharge? Why the hell would I pay for you to upcharge me on whatever the stadium PSLs and season tickets cost for a product that is unwatchable at this point in time? And in fact, most people just weren't showing up to watch the product by, I don't know. It felt like that Colts game after the bye was kind of the deal breaker. And then Levis got hurt and he was on the shelf for a while. They won the Miami game and you said, okay. Texans game got people back into it for a hot second and then they never did anything after that. They won they lost 6 straight?
Yes, it was a bad season, Buck. We understand this. You have found many, many creative ways to hammer that. And it was a bad season.
Brother, what else am I supposed to say for 18 weeks of horrible football other than find different ways to talk about how awful it was?
Tease this audio from Brian Callahan on how he's kind of evaluated himself as a head coach from year 1 to year 2.
Yeah, to be honest, I forgot about that.
Yeah, there's no substitute for doing it. The best way I can explain it is, a lot of you are parents in here. It's like having a kid where you can read all the how-to books and talk to all the people and get all the advice. Everyone tells you what you think that you're going to do and know. And then there's no substitute to just now all of a sudden you're changing diapers at 3 a.m. and no one really told you how miserable that can be. That's the best way I can describe it, is that there's all the preparation done is all great. And I felt prepared for it. There's just so many things that come up and so much more that you just don't know about until you're in it, until you're doing it every day. And that's a really important part. And I think that's why you see the guys that the longer they do it, the better they've gotten at it, the more refined their process is, and the better they handle all elements of the team. And that's what I'm looking for is I got to keep that development track too. I'm just like our rookie players. I got to keep, there's expectations on me, and I have to keep getting better and keep improving. And that's my goal for myself too, is to take all the lessons I learned this year and keep getting better. But yeah, there's no substitute for the experience. There's no way to know what it is until you do it.
That doesn't sound or having kids sound like much fun at all. Nobody on this show has kids.
I've seen this.
As far as I know.
Andy Samberg did this bit. I think it was on, he might have been with Kimmel or one of those late night.
Every time somebody describes what it is to have children, it makes me want nothing to do with it.
The way I saw Samberg describe it is like, you tell everybody that you're pregnant and, we're expecting. It's, oh my God, it's going to be the most magical time of your life. Oh, it's going to be just heavenly. It's the most beautiful thing. And then the second you have the kid and you tell people, they're like, welcome to hell, So
free time? What's that, loser?
Maybe some similarities to being a head coach in the NFL and everything that comes with that. Listen, you develop as parents, you develop as coaches.
Well, one would hope. It's not, you don't get fired from parenting. Maybe some people should get fired from parenting if they don't improve throughout the course of the process. But certainly you can get fired as a head coach, and there is nothing more meaningful that needs to happen than the product improving on the field as a direct result of all the different changes that they've made in the meantime. So we'll cross that bridge tomorrow. We'll have plenty of insights and information for you. As a result, it'll be a great time had by all. In the meantime, we are ready for bowls.
Presented by Two Rivers Ford, the South's most trusted Ford dealer. How would you change the college football playoff format, if at all? UW says conference champions should be an automatic qualifier, but not guaranteed top 4 seeds. Timing and scheduling was poor. A lot of dead space in the tournament. I agree with that.
That's my biggest issue is just how spread out all of this is.
It's not nearly as bad as in the BCS, where teams would literally have over a month off between the conference championship and the national championship. But I don't think we need 12, 13 days between playoff games, right? Like, let's knock it out.
It's excessive. For the sake of the teams, and I know that they don't do things for the sake of the teams. They do things for the sake of money and the most profitable version of this, but I don't know. I think it makes for a lesser product when you've got the disjointed schedules that you have for football teams that are specifically constructed for regiment and rhythm and timing and all these different things needing to be done on a basically, like a military operation, essentially.
What is one thing you want to see Brian Callahan improve on as a head coach? The majority of the replies just say wins, which, yes, we understand.
We set ourselves up for failure on that.
For sure. DJ says goal line play calling, not calling 4 straight pass plays from first and goal on the 1. I think there's some situational things that can be improved upon. 4th down conversion rate. Titans were 30th in the NFL at 39%.
Yeah, that's very specific to his play calling, and that, like I said, it's really tough for me to criticize play calling. That's the thing that I think the least amount of people are equipped to criticize. Sure. I'll just say generally, he needs to be a better CEO. Like the CEO of the football program, all of the things that it encompasses, he needs to have a better finger on the pulse of the entire football team, understanding that he was trying to get the offense off the ground first and foremost last year. Things slipped through the cracks.
What is the more interesting head coach hire in the NFL so far, Ben Johnson or Mike Vrabel? 71% say Ben Johnson to Chicago to work with Caleb Williams.
I think that's Vrabel fatigue.
Maybe. I think it is fascinating, though. The most exciting offensive coordinator in the NFL being paired with, a guy who's been the most exciting quarterback prospect since Trevor Lawrence. What was that?
What'd you do back there?
Nothing to see here. Keep moving.
I just made it the whole way through the show. It wouldn't be the show without
over
one
anyway.
screw up.
Those are the polls.
Or it wouldn't be a show without one significant screw up. I guess that wasn't significant. It's going to do it for us today. No prime time for me tonight. There is an interview with Brian Callahan up at A2ZSports.com. That is worth your time to check out. Some good nuggets in there. I'll see you tomorrow at 10.